Chapter 1147. Lu Tong was about to go crazy. How could he still be thinking about that at a time like this? I said, order it to stop immediately. Can't you hear me? Lu Tong raised her voice again. It was very ear-piercing. Chu Luiyue looked apologetic. Senior Sister Lu, this is a competition between them after all. Outsiders can't interfere. Also, Dumpling has always been hot-tempered. Even I can't persuade it. If this battle doesn't end, I think, it won't listen to you. Whether it was because they couldn't persuade him or not, everyone was well aware of it. He was forcing Lu Tong to admit defeat. How could Lu Tong not see it? Therefore, she was so angry that her whole body trembled. Her eyes seemed to be on fire as she stared at Chu Luiyue. Chu Yu, how dare you? Chu Luiyue pretended not to understand the warning in her words. His expression was indifferent and he didn't respond. Dumpling, on the other hand, seemed to be having a lot of fun. It didn't even look over. Its claws danced wildly, almost plucking all the feathers on the red-tailed phoenix's body. How could the red-tailed phoenix endure such humiliation? However, it was now covered in injuries and was no match for Dumpling. It was dying and didn't even have the strength to resist. It could only tilt its head and let Dumpling torture it. This scene was really strange. Lu Tong suddenly sneered and turned around. Fine. Since you don't want to stop, then, I'll take care of that thing myself. Senior Sister Lu, if you go on stage, it will be considered as admitting defeat. Chu Luiyue kindly reminded her. Lu Tong stopped in her tracks. A gust of cold air descended, and the air seemed to freeze inch by inch. Dead silence. Everyone looked at Chu Luiyue as if they were looking at a lunatic. Where did this kid get the courage to challenge Lu Tong like this? Ha! Lu Tong sneered. Her voice seemed to be squeezed out from between her teeth. You win this round. Tell your beast to stop immediately. Chu Luiyue slightly raised his chin. His originally calm face was instantly covered with a thin layer of frost, and the cold air was threatening. Senior Sister Lu, please take back the second half of your sentence. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that your animal won't be able to return alive today. She spoke very slowly, so everyone could hear every word clearly. The young man's face still carried a bit of immaturity, but every word he spoke was resolute and decisive, as if it carried the weight of 1,000 caddies. Lu Tong originally wanted to retort, but when she met that pair of bottomless, dark and unfathomable eyes, she suddenly shivered. Her heart inexplicably trembled, and she swallowed back the sarcastic words in her throat. After pausing for a moment, she turned her head and spoke in a stiff tone. I admit defeat, that's all. This was the biggest concession Lu Tong could make. Of course, it would be more appropriate to say that he had compromised or lowered his head. The expressions of Gong Xing and the others were speechless. They were very familiar with Lu Tong and naturally knew how humiliating it was for her to say such words to a junior brother who had just entered the academy. However, in the current situation, what else could she do? Her contracted divine beast was about to be killed by him. How could she care about anything else? Dumpling. Chu Luiyue finally spoke. Come back. Only then did Dumpling throw down the half-dead red-tailed phoenix. Then, she flew down and stomped on its face with her claws. Bah! Who asked you to covet the power of my bloodline? The thing's head tilted and it finally fainted completely. Lu Tong's face was ashen. Her gaze at Dumpling was as sharp as a steel blade. Tuanzi seemed to be unaware of it. It flew to the spring and drank a lot of water. A warm force instantly spread throughout her body. Dumpling's eyes lit up. It wanted to continue, but Chu Luiyue was still waiting for it. It could only reluctantly fly back. Transforming back to the size of a palm, Dumpling landed safely on Chu Liyue's shoulder. Although its body was also stained with traces of blood, it did not suffer any serious injuries. Chu Liyue's heart only relaxed after she checked it. Lu Yintong walked over with a livid expression and saw that her contracted divine beast was seriously injured and unconscious. From the horrifying wounds on its body, it could be seen that the other party had been ruthless in the battle just now. Hateful. Useless thing. Lu Yintong cursed in her heart. Her expression was ugly. This time, it would take at least 10 days to half a month to recover from the serious injuries. She did not know if it would affect her ranking on the Green Cloud roll next month. One had to know that a large part of the reason why she could be ranked in the top 50 of the warrior roll was that she had such a powerful divine beast. But now, just as Lu Yintong was about to call it back, a clear voice suddenly came from behind her. "Senior Sister Lu, you seem to have forgotten something." Lu Yintong turned around. Chu Liyue smiled innocently, but the words he said almost angered her to death. "You haven't fulfilled your bet yet." Hiss, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This Chu Yu was too daring. Could he not see how ugly Lu Yintong's expression was now? He was going to offend her to death. Chu Liyue obviously knew that this would make Lu Yintong hate him even more. But when had she ever given him a chance? They were the ones who suggested the competition, and they were the ones who planned the bet. If not for Dumpling's ability and her trump card, the one lying there would be Dumpling now. She had already offended them when she also had a red-tailed phoenix and her bloodline was richer and more orthodox than the other parties. Since she was wrong no matter what she did, why should she lower herself? Lu Yintong clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. If not for the fact that students were not allowed to fight on Thousand Wine Mountain, she would have gone back and torn that disgusting face apart. She turned around and walked to the red-tailed phoenix on the ground. She raised her wrist and a red force enveloped it. Soon, a drop of red blood condensed on the red-tailed phoenix's head. Then, the second and third drops. Lu Yintong flicked her sleeve. "Here you go." The 3 blood droplets flew over with a tyrannical force. Chu Liyue raised his eyebrows slightly. He circulated the force in his palm and received the 3 blood droplets safely. Some sharp-eyed people saw this scene and their expressions changed slightly. The way they looked at Chu Liyue was much more complicated than before. Lu Yintong was a demigod expert. Although she did not use her full strength in this move, the force it contained was not small. Chu Yu, a rank 7 warrior, actually received it easily. Chu Liyue's lips curled up slightly. Senior Sister Lu is a woman of her word. Everyone, enough. I beg you, please don't seek death again. Chu Liyue did not seem to hear the cries in their hearts. He fed the 3 blood droplets to Dumpling and asked with a smile, then, about the spring of Thousand Wine Mountain. Chapter 1148. Since I promised you, I'll keep my word. Lu Yintong finally couldn't help but shout. Everyone was silent for a moment. Many people looked at Chu Liyue sympathetically. This time, he had completely offended Lu Yintong. In the academy, the consequences of offending this small group were extremely serious. As long as they wanted to, they could make a freshman like Chu Yu, who had no background, struggle in the academy. Even if his master was Elder Wanjing, he couldn't completely control the undercurrents between the students. This kid is in trouble. However, the youth seemed to be unaware of this. When he heard Lu Yintong's words, he relaxed his brows and pursed his lips into a smile. Junior brother certainly trusts senior sister Lu's character. There was dead silence all around. Everyone could already imagine the miserable days he would have in the academy. Junior brother Chu Yu is indeed worthy of Elder Wanzhang's attention. You are indeed powerful. The smile on Gongxing's face faded a lot, and the corners of his eyes and brows could not hide the coldness. If it was anyone else, they would definitely feel guilty and afraid under his gaze. But Chu Luiyue would not. She calmly replied, "Thank you for your praise, senior brother Gongxing. Junior brother still has a lot to learn from you." Even Gongxing, who was used to being arrogant and unbridled, was speechless at this moment. His chest choked, and his anger burned even more. Then, he sneered. Good. Good. Junior brother Chu you. Very good. With that, he quickly walked to Lu Yintong's side. Ah Tong, go back and heal the little thing first. As for the rest, we'll talk about it later. Lu Yintong nodded. After this torment, his relaxed and playful mood had completely dissipated. The few of them turned around and were about to leave. The people below hurriedly made way for them. After taking a few steps, Gongxing suddenly turned around and stared coldly at Chu Luiyue. He said word by word, "Junior brother Chu Yu, if there's a chance in the future, let's spar again. When the time comes, let us see your ability." After saying that, they didn't stay any longer. Their figures quickly disappeared into the dense forest. The atmosphere on the mountaintop was almost stagnant, and no one spoke for a long time. No one had expected things to turn out this way. "Chu Yu, are you all right?" Luo Shishir stepped forward with a worried expression. Chu Luiyue chuckled. "Aren't I fine? What could have happened?" Arrogant. Yin Fan finally couldn't help but mock. "Do you think you're amazing after winning today? Very impressive. Do you know what kind of people you have offended? In the future, you'll have a taste of your own medicine." Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows. "Then how can I not offend them? Let Dumpling admit defeat and offer up the divine beast's blood." Yin Fan choked. If it was anyone else, it was impossible for them to do such a thing without any ill feelings. This wasn't just plundering the contracted divine beast, it was also a humiliation to its master. Forget it. Since things have already come to this, let nature take its course. Luo Yanming stepped forward and comforted him. They weren't in the right in the first place, so they couldn't really do anything to you. Naive. Yin Fan sneered. Luo Shishir and the others ignored him. At this moment, they could also see Yin Fan's rejection of Chu Yu. Although they had known Yin Fan for a long time, they could already see too many problems from this matter. In comparison, they wanted to stand on Chu Yu's side more. "Chu Yu, don't worry. You won fair and square. Even if it goes to the elders, they will still be in the wrong. If they really want to deal with you, there's still us. If it doesn't work, there's still fourth brother." Luo Yanling's ranking on the Azure Cloud roll was much higher than theirs. Chu Liuyue's heart warmed. "Thank you. However, this is my business after all. I will try my best to handle it myself." She paused for a moment, and there seemed to be a light flickering in her eyes. "I came to the academy to cultivate, to increase my strength, and to become an expert. Not to lower my head to anyone. How the other party treats me, I will naturally treat them the same." Since he didn't intend to respect her from the beginning, then there was no need to be polite. "That's right." Shuoxing's face was full of agreement. "They can't compare to you, so how could they have the face to target you? The strong were respected." Luo Shishir and Luo Yanming looked at each other, but there was still a hint of worry between their brows. Chu Luiyue smiled and shook her head. "Forget it, don't let this small matter affect your mood. Dumpling," she tapped Dumpling's head. "There's still some time before the end of the night. Hurry up and go." Roar. When Dumpling heard this, it immediately rushed to the spring eye excitedly and plunged its little head into it. Gulp, gulp, without asking or looking at its expression, Chu Luiyue could feel its joy and excitement. This made her feel much better. The master and servant were happy, but the others present had different thoughts. Some people began to leave. Obviously, they didn't want to be associated with this bold and unbridled new student, nor did they want to have any relationship with him. Soon, there were only a few people left on Thousand Wine Mountain. The place that was originally bustling with noise and excitement quickly became cold and desolate. Yin Fan wanted to persuade Luo Shishir and the others to leave quickly, but he was refuted by a few people and finally left angrily. Time passed little by little. Luo Yanming looked at the spring eye again and asked with a conflicted expression, "Why hasn't it drunk enough? Is it planning to stay here?" It had been quite some time since the end of that competition, but it was still there. It was just short of directly soaking itself in. Chu Luiwei rubbed her temples. Judging from Dumpling's current situation, the power contained in the spring water was really very effective for it. The injury it had just suffered was almost healed. Of course, the effect of the 3 drops of divine beast blood was also indispensable. If it stayed here a little longer, it might really be able to awaken the power of its bloodline quickly. "It's almost time, we have to go." Luo Shishir looked up at the sky and reminded. Chu Luiwei shouted at Dumpling. Dumpling reluctantly left the spring eye and looked back 3 times with every step. When it finally came back to Chu Luiwei, a short period of time had already passed. Seeing the nervousness and urging of the others, Chu Luiwei said, "Let's go." It should be too late to go down the mountain now. Boom. An earth-shattering loud sound suddenly exploded in the sky above Thousand Wine Mountain. Chu Luiwei and the others were shocked and immediately looked up. In the dark blue night sky, the bright moon was already hidden behind a large number of rolling dark clouds, and a silver dragon-like lightning was crazily gathering in it. "Someone is summoning Tianlei to refine equipment." Luo Yanming shouted with a face full of shock. "Let's go. If we are affected, we won't have a good time." As they spoke, the Tianlei suddenly fell and directly hit the people at the top of Thousand Wine Mountain. Digression: yesterday's first chapter was censored because of sensitive words and sentences. It had already been edited and waiting to be restored. In fact, when I was writing, I vaguely felt that I was going to cry. Summary: Yang Wen missed a bite of fat meat. Chapter 1149. The dazzling light illuminated half of the sky. "Retreat!" Luo Yanming yelled. She grabbed Luo Shishir and ran down the mountain. Zhuo Xing followed closely behind. He had just taken a step when he seemed to have thought of something. He quickly turned back and shouted at Chu Luiwei. "Chu Yu! What are you waiting for? Hurry up and leave." Why was he still standing there stupidly at a time like this? Was he waiting to be struck by lightning? Chu Luiwei had just moved when he saw a red figure flash in front of him. Dumpling had suddenly jumped out again. "Dumpling!" Chu Luiwei hurriedly shouted, but Dumpling did not seem to hear him. With a few leaps, it went straight to the mouth of the spring at the top of the mountain. Chu Luiwei frowned. It had just returned from there. Why did it go back now? Could it be that there was something in the mouth of the spring that attracted it? But no matter what it was not as important as his own life. At this moment, Tianlei was approaching. The small red figure looked especially small under the dazzling light of the Tianlei. If it struck, Chu Luiwei gritted his teeth and suddenly ran toward the top of the mountain. "Chu Yu! Are you crazy?" Zhuo Xing's shocked roar came from behind. Running to the top of the mountain at this time, was he not courting death? At this moment, Luo Shishir and Zhuo Xing, who had rushed down some distance, heard Zhuo Xing shout and turned back to look. It did not matter if it was unbearable, but when they looked, they widened their eyes in disbelief. In the dark night, the sky was dark. On the lonely and cold mountain peak, the lush forest cast a thick shadow. And in this ink-like darkness that was difficult to disperse, a bolt of heavenly lightning suddenly tore it apart. It destroyed everything in its path. Even if it was just a simple glance, it was enough to send chills down one's spine. Just when everyone wanted to avoid it immediately, there was one person who rushed up without hesitation. Chu Yu. Luo Shishi shouted out subconsciously. But the sound of wind and thunder shook the sky. Her voice was swallowed by the deafening movement. Luo Shishi gritted her teeth and was about to run back when Luo Yanming pulled her back. What are you doing? Luo Yanming's voice was extremely stern. Do you want to die? Luo Shishi opened her mouth, but when she saw her brother's gaze, she finally swallowed the rest of her words. Luo Yanming also saw the worry in her eyes. He sighed in his heart and shouted at Zhusheng, "Don't worry. Zhusheng. Come and take Shishi and leave first. I'll go get Chu Yu." Although Luo Shishi and Zhusheng were martial artists and Luo Yanming was a Xian master, his combat strength was the strongest among the three of them. Zhusheng quickly understood what he meant and rushed over. However, just as Luo Yanming was about to go up, a clear and powerful voice suddenly came from above. At first, the three of them did not take these words to heart. In their opinion, Chu Luiyue had already gone crazy. Otherwise, why would she take such a risk? She was taking her own life as a joke. However, before Luo Yanming could lift his leg, a powerful force suddenly wrapped around him. The force was overbearing, but it was also gentle and tolerant. Affected by this force, the three of them retreated uncontrollably. They looked at each other in shock. Chu Yu was really going to let them leave first. He really planned to deal with Tianlei by himself. Luo Yanming frowned. After a moment of silence, he said. Maybe Chu Yu really has other plans, he said in a low voice. Why don't we leave first and wait for him at the foot of the mountain so that we won't cause trouble for him if we stay here? For some reason, he felt that Chu Yu could really deal with the situation in front of him alone. Even if it sounded extremely ridiculous. Luo Shishi disagreed with a frown. Under the dazzling light of Tianlei, the young man's thin and tall figure looked especially frail. But, splash! Zhusheng wasn't paying attention and stepped into the stream. He has the black jade token on him. Even if he's really in danger, the elders won't just sit by and watch. Luo Yanming said calmly. This is still the Academy's territory after all. Luo Shishi's expression finally relaxed a little. Finally, she nodded. Then, boom. Before he could finish his sentence, a second bolt of lightning had appeared in the sky. What was even more shocking was that this bolt of heavenly lightning was actually heading straight for them. Let's go. Luo Yanming realized that something was wrong and made a prompt decision to retreat with the others. Zhusheng also quickly pulled himself out of the stream. Half of his legs were soaked. However, even though they were fast, Tianlei was faster. In the blink of an eye, the heavenly lightning had already caught up to the top of their heads. The powerful pressure easily shrouded them. At this moment, Chu Luiyue had already followed Dumpling to the mouth of the spring. Dumpling, Chu Luiyue had just opened his mouth when he was stunned by the scene in front of him. In the inch-sized mouth of the spring, the transparent spring water gradually stopped gushing out, leaving only a small piece of clear and cool water. The shadow of the Tianlei above them was clearly reflected in the water. The water was sparkling and bright. For a moment, this scene gave Chu Luiyue the illusion that the Tianlei was actually swimming in the spring. Beside it, there seemed to be a stream of light pouring down, following the flow of the stream. This strange and ghostly scene was so shocking that even Chu Luiyue was stunned on the spot. Dumpling was squatting beside the mouth of the spring, looking at it eagerly. It seemed like she was waiting for something, or like she wanted to dive in and take out the treasure hidden below. Chu Luiyue suddenly remembered the legendary three-eyed eagle's words. It said that this spring could help Dumpling completely awaken the power of her bloodline. Could it be that there was really a secret below? Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment, and a layer of faint golden light enveloped her body. With the protection of the pure gold sacred armor, she felt slightly more at ease and reached out towards the mouth of the spring. Crack. All of a sudden, a strange sound was heard. Chu Luiyue seemed to have sensed something and looked up. That bolt of heavenly lightning suddenly struck down at her at an even faster speed. At the same time, the wind whistled in her ears. The second Tianlei that had enveloped Luo Shishir and the others suddenly changed direction and headed straight for Chu Luiyue. Chi-chi. The sound of air being torn apart was sharp. Luo Shishir and the others looked up, and in the next second, their eyes were filled with shock. At the top of the mountain, the two bolts of heavenly lightning struck the thin and tall youth at the same time. Boom! In an instant, the light was so bright that it almost stung everyone's eyes. And the youth's figure completely disappeared in the dazzling light. Chapter 1150. Shu Yu. The few of them exclaimed, and their hearts almost jumped out of their throats. At this moment, a tyrannical wave spread rapidly from the top of the mountain. Luo Yanming knew that something was wrong and immediately retreated with the two of them. The few of them only felt a terrifying and vast force attacking them, and their bodies were instantly sent flying. The world was spinning. In just a moment, they fell to the ground together. Bang! A dull sound was heard. Luo Shishir endured the pain on her back and forced herself to look up, only to find that she had been sent out of the Thousand Wine Mountain. Luo Yanming and Zhusheng were the same, and they fell beside her. Looking up from here, the Thousand Wine Mountain was still quiet, and the wind rustled the leaves as if nothing had happened. Luo Shishir's heart seemed to be clenched by something. Shishir, how are you? Luo Yanming got up with difficulty, ignoring the pain on his body, and took the lead to ask worriedly. Luo Shishir shook her head. Fifth brother, don't worry. I'm fine. But Luo Yanming noticed that her expression was not right, so he followed her gaze. When he saw the pitch-black and extremely silent Myriad Wine Mountain, he was shocked as well, and his pupils instantly constricted. How could this be? Although this was the foot of the Thousand Wine Mountain, it was definitely not to the extent that they could not see the situation on the mountain. Moreover, the commotion just now was so shocking. Logically speaking, no matter how far away they were, they should have noticed it. But now, the Thousand Wine Mountain seemed to be quiet. It seems that there's a special barrier on the Thousand Wine Mountain. Zhusheng bared his teeth and stood up. Otherwise, it definitely wouldn't be like what we're seeing now. This also explains why there was such a commotion on the Thousand Wine Mountain, but no one came. Zhusheng's words enlightened Luo Shishir and Zhusheng. No wonder. A light flashed across Luo Yanming's mind. The opening time of the Thousand Wine Mountain every day is specially set. I didn't think about it before, but now that I think about it, isn't this very strange? Perhaps, some elders' weapon refinement often attracted Tianlei, so they set such a rule. Also, in order not to arouse everyone's suspicion and worry, they specially prepared a barrier to hide everything. If you don't stay on the Thousand Wine Mountain, no one will know what happened there. Luo Shishir continued his words thoughtfully. The three of them fell into a brief silence. This matter was actually very easy to understand. Just a moment ago, they were still on the mountain and could clearly see the two Tianlei bolts descending. Now, as soon as they were forced out, everything disappeared before their eyes. But Chu Yu is still inside. Zhusheng scratched his head. Luo Shishir and Luo Yanming looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. The power of those two Tianlei bolts was truly astonishing. Even they didn't dare to face it head-on. Not to mention Chu Yu, who was only at the early stage of the Seventh Order. The Thousand Wine Mountain is the border between the Celestial Physicians area and the Weapon Refiners area. There should be elders there, Luo Yanming said slowly. We shouldn't be able to get in now. Luo Shishir hesitated for a moment. I'll go look for master. Her master was naturally elder when she. Now. Luo Yanming looked up. It was almost dawn. It didn't seem appropriate to look for the elder at this time. As if reading his thoughts, Luo Shishir shook her head. This matter must be resolved as soon as possible. The longer he stays inside, the more dangerous it will be. That Tianlei was no joke. Luo Yanming hesitated for a moment and finally nodded. Okay. Then I'll wait here. You guys go and look for Elder Wen Shi. At the same time, Chu Luyue, who was on the top of the mountain, was in a stalemate with the two Tianlei bolts above her. Yes, a stalemate. When she sensed that the two Tianlei bolts were attacking her, Chu Luyue withdrew her hand from the spring water, shook off the water stains, and stood up. But when they arrived in front of her, the two Tianlei bolts stopped at the same time. They were only a few steps away from her. Chu Luyue looked up. Standing close to it, one could clearly see the two streaks of heavenly lightning flowing with brilliant colors. The pressure on them was even more shocking. But they didn't move. They hovered in the air and seemed to be hesitating. If someone could see this scene at this moment, they would definitely feel that it was extremely absurd. Whoosh! Chu Luyue's palm flashed with black light, and the dragon abyss sword was already held tightly by her. The simple and heavy sword reflected a cold light. It was a dignified and boiling battle intent. Buzz! Abundant force poured in, and the dragon abyss sword hummed. Chu Luyue narrowed her eyes, and the corners of her mouth slowly curled up into a presumptuous smile. Which of you two will go first? Master. Are you inside? Master. Elder Wen Shi was resting when he suddenly heard a hurried knock on the door. Recognizing that this anxious voice came from his newly accepted disciple, Luo Shishir, Elder Wen Shi's heart skipped a beat. With a thought, the door was opened. Luo Shishir and Zhuxing were standing at the door, looking nervous. What's wrong? What happened? Elder Wen Shi frowned and asked. Suddenly coming at this time, it was definitely not a small matter. Luo Shishir said anxiously, Master. Quickly go to Thousand Wine Mountain to take a look. Chu Yu is trapped at the top of the mountain. What? The remaining half of drowsiness completely disappeared, and Elder Wen Shi suddenly opened his eyes and jumped down from the bed. You said Chu Yu is trapped at Thousand Wine Mountain? Yes. And when we came down, there were two Tianlei. Elder Wen Shi's expression tensed up, and he immediately walked out. Master will go now. Luo Shishir and Zhuxing both heaved a sigh of relief. If they could catch up quickly, Chu Yu might be safer. You two stay here. Elder Wen Shi suddenly turned around and said with a serious expression. But, also, don't mention what happened tonight to anyone. Elder Wen Shi had always been smiling and amiable before. This was the first time the two of them had seen him with such a serious expression. Their hearts couldn't help but jump, and they nodded subconsciously. Master, don't worry, we will definitely keep our mouths shut. Elder Wen Shi stared at the two of them, and only then did he let out a sigh of relief. All right, don't worry too much. I'll go take a look first. Master, please help me bring Chu Yu back safely. Luo Shishir couldn't help but say. Elder Wen Shi blew his beard and glared, even if you don't say it, I will still catch that kid. Being trapped at Thousand Wine Mountain at this time, he definitely didn't come down in time. The two of them kept quiet guiltily. Actually, it wasn't that late. It was just a little late. Who knew that things would turn out like this? Watch how I teach this kid a lesson later. Elder Wen Shi was furious. This was only the first day he officially became a student of the academy. And he had already caused such a big trouble. At first, he thought that the kid was very obedient, but who knew, hey, Wen Shi. What are you doing here? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1151. Hearing the sound, the three of them turned their heads to look. Under the moonlight, they saw a familiar figure walking over unsteadily. It was Elder Huafeng. Seeing the wine pot in his hand, Elder Wenxi's face was immediately filled with disdain. How much did you drink? Elder Huafeng chuckled. Not much, not much. I just took a few sips. Why are there two other students here? He took a closer look and recognized Luo Shishir and Zhuosheng. The way he looked at Elder Wenxi was even stranger. You're still bringing the children to train at this time. This is too much. Even if he wanted to give his students special treatment, there was no need to be so active, right? Today was the first day they officially acknowledged their master, right? Elder Wenxi looked at him as if he was looking at a fool. Do you think I'm such a person? Use your brain to think clearly. Luo Shishir and Zhuosheng, Elder Huafeng actually thought about it seriously and shook his head. TSK, then what are you doing? Elder Wenxi couldn't be bothered to waste time with him and hurried forward. There's an accident on Thousand Wine Mountain. What? These words instantly woke Elder Huafeng up. What happened? Oh. Tell me about it, quick. I'm still counting on the spring. That kid Chu Yu is trapped in Thousand Wine Mountain. Elder Wenxi said concisely. Oh, what? Elder Huafeng's eyes widened. You mean Chu Yu? Although there were many students in the academy, they might not know all of them. However, Chu Yu was personally recruited by them. Moreover, Chu Yu performed well in the assessment at the beginning of the month and had just acknowledged Wan Jing as his master. It was difficult for them to forget him even if they wanted to. Elder Huafeng didn't care about drinking anymore and hurriedly followed him. I'll go with you. Elder Wenxi glanced at him. Elder Huafeng coughed hard. I'm just worried about the safety of the children. Elder Wenxi sneered. This old thing was just doing it for the spring water. However, he didn't expose him. At this time, it was always good to have more people. Furthermore, compared to the other elders of the Master Teacher Academy finding out about this matter, it would be much safer for him to call Radiant Peak over. He turned around and looked at Luo Shishir and Luo Shishir. Stay here. Wait for Master to return. The two of them had no choice but to agree. They watched as the two elders left. A moment later, when they had completely disappeared from sight, Zhuosheng could not help but mutter, Shishir, don't you think that the elders seem to be very secretive about Thousand Wine Mountain? Luo Shishir nodded. From the looks of it, there was clearly some secret hidden on Thousand Wine Mountain. Her intuition told her that it was better for them not to know too much. With the help of the two elders, he should be fine. Luo Shishir exhaled softly, but her heart still felt like it was being weighed down by a heavy stone. Zhuosheng thought about it and comforted her. Don't worry, at the very least, he still has a crimson-tailed red phoenix by his side. There won't be any problems. Luo Shishir could only nod. I hope so. On Thousand Wine Mountain, as soon as Chu Lue finished speaking, the surroundings seemed to become even quieter. The two Tianlei seemed to have stopped above her head, motionless. Chu Lue raised her eyebrows and pointed at the first one. Since you came down first, then, you first. Chi. Tianlei, who was pointed at, suddenly took a step back. Chu Lue raised her eyebrows and pointed the tip of her sword at the other one. You. Chi. This one retreated even further. Dumpling glanced at him disdainfully. Bah. Useless. Chu Lue shook her wrist. Are you coming down or not? Her voice was clear and carried a hint of nonchalance. TSK. To think that she thought that the Tianlei she encountered this time would be different from the previous ones. Who knew that it would be the same in front of her? Chu Luiyue felt a headache coming on. Logically speaking, she was not sharpening her sword this time, nor was she forging any yuan tools. Why did these Tianlei have such a reaction? Boom! At this moment, the third Tianlei descended. Chu Luiyue looked up, a little impatient. There's more. Then we'll talk about it when all of you are here. When Elder Wenxi and Elder Huafeng arrived at Thousand Wine Mountain, the first thing they saw was Luo Yanming standing at the foot of the mountain. Master. Luo Yanming was also shocked when she saw Elder Huafeng. Why is my master here too? Elder Huafeng widened his eyes. Ha! On the way here, he was still complaining to Elder Wenxi that his new disciple was too active. In the blink of an eye, he saw that his new disciple was also here. Elder Wenxi glanced at him disdainfully. Who's stronger? Elder Huafeng coughed and wiped the sweat off his forehead. It's fine, it's fine. At least our disciples are only outside. The most important thing is the one inside, that's true. Elder Wenxi nodded in agreement. I wonder what Wan Zhang's expression will be when he finds out about this. Anyway, there's someone here to be the scapegoat. Yanming, you go back first. Leave this to us. Elder Huafeng urged her to leave. At this time, if she's still here, isn't she looking for trouble? Then Shi and Drishing, Luo Yanming looked behind the two. There was no one. The two of them didn't come. Elder Wenxi also added. You should go back as soon as possible. In addition, don't tell anyone about what happened here today. Hearing the seriousness in the two elders' words, Luo Yanming thought for a moment and immediately agreed. Yes. After Luo Yanming left, the two of them looked at each other. Let's go up and take a look. As Elder Wenxi spoke, his figure flashed and went straight to the top of the mountain. Elder Huafeng followed closely behind. After flying into the air, Elder Wenxi waved his sleeve and threw out the green jade token. Buzz! The void shook. Ripples spread out like water. This scene is so familiar, Elder Huafeng suddenly muttered in a low voice and nudged Elder Wenxi with his elbow. Hey, Wenxi, don't you think this thing happened in a dream? Elder Wenxi looked at him speechlessly. Is this old thing really drunk? He reminded him kindly, it's not a dream, it's real. Have you forgotten that a few years ago, when you were drinking on Thousand Wine Mountain, you were caught red-handed by that scourge? Elder Huafeng's eyes slowly widened, and the scenes that he had almost forgotten flashed through his mind. A trace of panic flashed in his eyes. Damn. Shut up. As he spoke, he quickly looked around, subconsciously grabbed the wine pot at his waist, and stuffed it back into his green jade token. He looked as if he had a guilty conscience. Elder Wenxi said bitterly, look at how useless you are. Could it be that that scourge can jump out now and snatch your wine? Elder Huafeng was about to argue when the barrier in front of him suddenly opened. Boom! A bolt of heavenly thunder crackled as it charged towards the two of them. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1152. What the hell? Elder Wenxi's reaction was extremely fast. With a wave of his sleeve, a powerful force flew out. Boom! The two forces collided head-on. An intense collision. After all, Elder Wenxi was one of the top experts in the academy. With this attack, the power on the Tianlei was immediately weakened by a lot. The originally dazzling light instantly dimmed by a lot. Who summoned them? Elder Wenxi aggressively stepped into the enchantment. Elder Huafeng followed closely behind. Where's that kid Chuyu? He didn't get killed by the Tianlei, right? As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Elder Wency's body stiffen. He was looking ahead with a shocked expression, as if he had seen something unbelievable. "What are you looking at?" He followed Elder Wency's gaze and looked over. Halfway through his words, he stopped abruptly. He saw a youth standing on the top of Thousand Wine Mountain. His figure was a little thin, but he was still tall and slender. At this moment, he was standing beside the spring, holding a black longsword tightly in his hand. The force around him was surging. It was Chu Yu. At this moment, 2 bolts of lightning were hovering above his head. The Tianlei was only a short distance away from him. As long as he took another step forward, he would be able to easily crush him. But for some reason, the 2 Tianlei didn't move. They just floated there quietly. As for Chu Yu, his back was straight and he held the sword in his hand. He didn't seem to be afraid. This scene was so strange that the 2 elders, who were used to seeing storms, couldn't say anything for a while. The young man seemed to have noticed the commotion and looked over. "Elder Wency, Elder Huafeng, you're finally here." Chu Liuyue's face was filled with surprise and joy, as if he had heaved a sigh of relief. The expressions of the 2 elders were even more strange. This wasn't right. "Luo Shishir and the others said that you were trapped in Thousand Wine Mountain," Elder Wency said hesitantly. "You don't look like it." Chu Liyue raised his sword and pointed at the 2 Tianlei above. "That's right. The students were trapped here. Didn't he just send one flying?" In the end, it was caught by Elder Wency. Chu Liyue thought so in his heart, but the expression on his face did not reveal the slightest flaw. The 2 elders glanced at the 2 Tianlei, which were still as immovable as mountains, and then looked at each other with strange expressions. No matter how he looked at it, he didn't look like he was trapped. When they saw how nervous Luo Shishir and the others were, they thought that Chu Yu was in a life-and-death situation. But looking at it now, why was it completely different from what he had expected? Elder Wency waved his hand. "Don't worry. With us here, that thing can't hurt you. Just come over." Chu Liyue looked down hesitantly at Dumpling, who was squatting beside the spring without even moving her butt. "Elder, can this student leave after a while?" "Ah." Elder Wency was puzzled. "You still want to stay here?" He turned his gaze and finally saw Dumpling below. "This is your contracted divine beast. If I'm not wrong, that's a red-tailed phoenix, right?" Chu Liyue nodded. "TSK, the color of this red-tailed phoenix is actually so pure and rich. The power of its bloodline is probably very shocking." Elder Huafeng's eyes lit up. He had seen other red-tailed phoenixes before, but this one was definitely one of the best among them. This kid is really lucky. He can even contract such a divine beast. Elder Huafeng smacked his lips. "You're staying here for this?" Chu Liyue hesitated for a moment, but still nodded slightly. There was a secret hidden in the spring of Thousand Wine Mountain. From the looks of it, the 2 elders most likely knew about it. Then, there was no need for her to hide it. No wonder. However, this won't do. Thousand Wine Mountain has never allowed students to stay too long, not to mention that it's already forbidden to stay here. You'd better bring the little guy with you and leave with us as soon as possible. Chu Liyue actually wanted to leave too. After all, the 2 elders had already personally come looking for her. If she stayed any longer, they might discover something. She walked over and picked up Dumpling. Dumpling looked at her eagerly. It was almost there, it was almost there. It would be a waste to leave now. Chu Liyue glanced out of the corner of her eye and saw that there seemed to be a light flickering in the spring. She took a closer look and was suddenly stunned. Because it wasn't the shadow of Tianlei reflected on the water surface, but the Tianlei that really existed. At some point in time, several Tianlei had already gathered in the spring. They were like silver dragons swimming underwater. Chu Luiyue held her breath. Who would have thought that there was such a huge secret hidden in the spring? What Dumpling was waiting for was this. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes slightly, suppressing all the emotions in her eyes. When she raised her eyes again, her face was already calm. Just as she left the spring with Dumpling, 2 Tianlei in the sky suddenly fell one after another. Plop! Without looking back, Chu Luiyue knew that it was the sound of Tianlei landing in the spring. Then, the third heavenly thunder, whose power had been weakened by Elder Wenxi, also rushed over. Elder Wenxi and Elder Huafeng looked at each other. This kid should be able to guess it. Chu Yu, pretend that you never saw what happened today. Before Elder Wenxi could finish his words, a few more loud sounds came from the sky. Boom! 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 Another few Tianlei appeared one after another. This time, another loud and proud laughter came at the same time. Ha ha ha! I've finally broken through. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1153. Before she finished speaking, a figure suddenly stepped through the air and came over. Chu Luiyue looked up and saw the person's robes fluttering. With a few strides, he had crossed quite a distance. She did not even see the other party's movements clearly and he was already in front of her. Her heart skipped a beat. This person's strength was probably stronger than Elder Wenxi and the rest. Again. That person stood in the air and waved his arms. Dark clouds surged in the sky. 3 more Tianlei appeared at the same time. These, in addition to the previous ones, were a total of 9 Tianlei. Chu Luiyue's eyes stared intently. Weapon Refinement Master. This was actually her first time officially seeing a Weapon Refinement Master. Previously, when she had sharpened the sword herself, she had relied on Taizu's help to succeed. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be stirring. Weapon Refinement Masters, to her in the past, were merely legendary existences. Distant, mysterious, as if they could never be touched. Even though she had once forged the Cloud Sky Copper sword with Taizu's help, strictly speaking, that was not considered weapon refinement in the true sense. After all, the Cloud Sky Copper sword already had a sword shape and an embryo at that time. What she had to do was to borrow the Tianlei that Taizu had attracted to sharpen it. And at this moment, she finally knew what weapon refinement was. That person stood in the air and waved his hands. The Tianlei seemed to be under his control and flew down. Plop! One by one, the Tianlei fell into the mouth of the spring. The shocking pressure and aura almost pressed Chu Luiyue until she could not breathe. She should have retreated to avoid being accidentally injured. But her feet seemed to be nailed to the ground and she could not move. Silver light flashed in the mouth of the spring. Even though she was already some distance away, Chu Luiyue could still see the scene inside clearly. Countless tyrannical forces intertwined. Right at this moment, that person in the sky suddenly raised his hand. Chi! A green glow flew up from the mouth of the spring. It fell into that person's hands. Chu Luiyue looked up and saw that it was a short sword. The short sword was green in color, as clear as jade, and emitted a faint luster. The sword was thin and narrow, but extremely sharp. The pressure was astonishing. Whoosh! That person held the sword and lightly drew a line in the air. A huge black spatial crack suddenly appeared. Vaguely, there was the sound of a tiger's roar. This was enough to show the power of this forged sword. Chu Luiyue was shocked. This was her first time seeing a true weapon refiner forge a divine artifact. Even though she couldn't see everything, what she saw so far was enough to shock her. Seized Tianlei's power to forge the world's divine weapons. In an instant, it was as if the entire world was under his control. Although the expression on his face did not change much, Chu Liyue's heart was uncontrollably stirring up huge waves. Her black jade-like eyes were bright and resplendent. 9 Tianlei. Then, that person must have forged a top-notch high-grade divine artifact. And this person was at least a high-level armament master. That's right. That's right. You didn't waste this month of my efforts. That person was obviously very happy as well. He held the short sword in his hand and said happily. But at this time, the expressions of Elder Wenxi and Elder Ouyang were not so good. Elder Hua Feng was the first to lose control and shouted, "Ouyang, come down." Only then did Elder Ouyang come back to his senses and look down. Hua Feng. Wenxi. Why are the two of you here? As he spoke, he turned his gaze and saw Chu Liyue standing next to him. His eyes, which were almost invisible from his smile, suddenly widened, and his face was filled with shock. Why is there a child here? The two elders, Chu Liyue, who had been ignored. Although her current appearance and figure were not so eye-catching, it was not so easy for others to not see her. Hey, what's wrong with the two of you? Elder Ouyang raised his head and looked at the sky. The dark night was almost fading away. The horizon was dark blue, and the place where the sky met the earth was suffused with a fish-belly white. The light gradually penetrated through the layers of clouds. It's going to be dawn soon. Why are you still here with a child? Bah! Elder Hua Feng couldn't help but spit. Ouyang. Open your eyes wide and take a look. We didn't bring this kid in. When you summoned Tianlei to refine the sword just now, he was already here. You're blind and you can't see him, and you're blaming us. What? He was here just now. Elder Ouyang was at a loss. Only then did he carefully size up Chu Liyue, and his expression became more and more strange. Is this a new student? Doesn't he know the rules? The corner of Chu Liyue's eyes twitched. She suddenly felt that ever since she entered Lingxiao College, she had been fighting with the word rules. The key was that she didn't deliberately violate the rules, but for some reason, she would encounter all kinds of situations every time. It was to the point where she couldn't explain it at all. It's all your fault. Before Chu Liyue could explain, Elder Wenxi took the lead and sneered. Before refining, don't you know to see if there are any other students here? According to what Luo Shishir and the others said just now, they should have left at the right time. But before they could leave, Tianlei came. Thus, Chu Yu was trapped. In the end, it became like this. Elder Ouyang blinked his eyes innocently. How could I have thought that there would be people here? He was in a hurry today, but he wasn't too early. After all, this place had always been fine before. Who knew? At this moment, Chu Liyue finally understood the whole story. It turned out that Elder Ouyang had been preparing to refine the sword here for a long time. Today was the last day, and it was also the most critical day to summon Tianlei and carry out the final tempering. Previously, he could only summon 8 Tianlei. Today, he finally summoned 9 Tianlei. He couldn't help but feel excited. For a moment, he didn't care so much and simply moved a little bit ahead of time. In the spring, there was a sword embryo that he had put in before. When the last process was completed today, it could be officially forged into a divine weapon. Unexpectedly, he happened to run into Chu Liyue and the others who returned late. This led to the current situation. That's not right. As Elder Ouyang was speaking, he suddenly thought of something. He frowned and looked at Chu Liyue, his eyes full of doubts. Even if you make it in time, the power of Tianlei will drive all of you out. How could? He paused. If he remembered correctly, the Tianlei that he summoned at the beginning stopped after meeting this kid. Boy, what's the matter with you? A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 1154. Chu Liuyue's expression was innocent. She blinked her eyes lightly, and a trace of confusion appeared in her clear eyes. This student doesn't know either. Elder Ouyang looked at her suspiciously. After this old man summoned Tianlei, it should have landed directly in this spring. Unless it felt that there was another threat, it would have changed its path halfway. Just now, this Tianlei seemed to have been entangled with you for so long. He sized up Chu Liyue from head to toe and muttered in a low voice, he doesn't look old. He shouldn't be able to deal with Tianlei. Ouyang, what are you thinking? Elder Huafeng laughed out loud. This brat Chu Yu is only at the early stage of the 7th stage. How could he be a match for Tianlei? If Wenxi and I didn't come in time, Elder Wenxi, who was beside him, didn't say anything in agreement. Instead, he looked at Chu Liyue with a deep gaze. He'd stepped into the barrier before Elder Huafeng, so he was able to see the situation much clearer than Elder Huafeng. At that time, after the two of them entered, Chu Yu was standing at the top of the mountain. However, at that time, he didn't seem to be besieged by Tianlei. Instead, it seemed like he was confronting Tianlei. Yes. It was a confrontation. Elder Wenxi had seen many storms and waves. He knew that under normal circumstances, this kind of situation would only happen when a cultivator was extremely strong. However, this was definitely not something that Chu Yu could do. He still remembered that when the youth turned around, although his face was filled with surprise, his jade-like eyes were unexpectedly calm. No matter how he thought about it, it was wrong. Chu Liyue lowered her eyes and pretended not to know. Elder Ouyang asked for a while, but seeing that he couldn't get anything out of him, he simply gave up. I'm probably wrong, let's not talk about this for now. What do you plan to do in this situation? Elder Ouyang's gaze swept back and forth between the two elders, and there was a meaningful look in his eyes. This 1,000-wine mountain was usually strictly limited to the time to enter. Students were absolutely not allowed to appear here at such a time. But now, not only was Chu Yu here, he had seen too much. Even if he didn't know the secret of the spring, he had already seen something he shouldn't have. If it was an outsider who had barged in on purpose, they could just kill him directly. But in the end, Chu Yu was a student of his own academy. He couldn't do that. Therefore, this matter became very troublesome. Elder Wenxi was silent for a moment and looked at Chu Liyue. Chu Yu, are you able to keep your mouth shut about today's matter and not reveal anything to the outside world? Could Chu Liyue say no? She nodded and said seriously, today, I've been cultivating in my residence. I don't know anything else. Elder Wenxi stared at him. That spring eye. You, before he could finish his sentence. The face of the young man in front of him was still a little immature. Her eyes were clean, pure, and clear. It was as if one could see the bottom with a single glance. He heaved a sigh of relief. Forget it. Let's just pretend that nothing happened today. Whoosh. Before he could finish his words, a strange sound suddenly came from the spring eye on the top of the mountain. Chu Liyue instinctively turned around to take a look and saw that the spring was glowing brightly. Vaguely, she could see that several Tianlei inside were swimming faster. They were intertwining crazily. It was as if they would break out of it in the next moment. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. Standing here, she could clearly feel that the pressure in that place was rising at an astonishing speed. At this moment, dumplings suddenly flew out from her shoulder. She went straight there. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. Dumpling. The three elders were also shocked. Stop it. Elder Wenxi roared. But it was too late. Chu Liyue and Dumpling's position was very close to the spring eye. It made a move at such a surprising time. Who could stop it? Plop. Tuanzi plunged directly into the mouth of the spring. In an instant, sparks flew everywhere. Its small red figure was instantly enveloped by countless silver lights. Crackle. Chu Luyue could even clearly hear the sound of the Tianlei swimming crazily on Dumpling's body. She was about to move when she suddenly felt a subtle fluctuation in her body. That was Dumpling's aura increasing. Chu Luyue was really shocked. This was the reason why Dumpling couldn't fly out. This was only the beginning. Its bloodline potential seemed to be showing signs of being stimulated. If it stayed in it for a little longer, quick! Get it out! Elder Ouyang shouted with trembling hands. My wine! Elder Huafeng screamed and was the first to pounce over. This little thing actually went in directly. He ran directly to the spring eye and grabbed Dumpling with his big hand. Tuanzi blinked its round eyes and dived into the deeper part of the cave. Elder Huafeng was really anxious and couldn't help but curse, "Come out for me." It wasn't easy for Dumpling to find this opportunity to come in. At this moment, it was enjoying it the most, so how could it come out? Elder Huafeng gritted his teeth in anger and subconsciously wanted to make a move. But when his hand was about to sink into the water, he suddenly stopped and a trace of struggle flashed across his face. It wasn't easy for them to raise it for so many years. Chu Yu. Get it out immediately. Elder Wensi spoke up. Seeing his obviously serious expression, Chu Luyue curled her hands in her sleeves and looked at Dumpling. Dumpling. If you don't come back, never come back. She said these words very calmly, but there was a clear warning in her voice. Dumpling's body stiffened, and then it quickly swam back and forth in the spring eye before reluctantly flying up. Its entire body was soaked, and its red feathers were soaked in water, making the color even richer. On it, one could even see a few silver lights flashing quickly and disappearing under its feathers. When the elders saw this scene, their expressions became extremely interesting. That was the Tianlei that they had stored with great difficulty in the spring eye. After so many years, they had finally saved up this little bit, but in the end, it was all used up by this thing. You! Elder Wensi took a deep breath, and his vision turned black. Dumpling squatted on Chu Luyue's shoulder and rubbed its head with its wings with an innocent expression. Elder Wensi suddenly couldn't say the rest of his words. The red-tailed phoenix was a divine beast, and its intelligence was not inferior to that of the human race. The reason why it did this was because it did it on purpose. It still dared to do this in front of them. With such a temperament and courage, it was useless to scold it 100 times. Elder Wensi turned his gaze and looked at Chu Luyue, suppressing the anger in his heart. Chu Yu. Now, what do you think we should do? Chu Luyue pondered for a moment, then suddenly picked up Dumpling and handed it over. Elder, whoever causes trouble will be responsible, okay? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1155. Dumpling, who was abandoned, mistress, did you say something wrong? You're not serious, are you? Dumpling held on to her last glimmer of hope and turned her head with difficulty to look at Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue returned a look of helplessness and pain. I'm really sorry. Because her intuition told her that this matter was very serious. Very serious. Looking at the elder's current expressions, if she didn't try her best to pull herself out, she would probably be ruthlessly beaten up. Chu Luyue admitted that she didn't have the strength to contend with these three elders. Then, it was better to save as many as possible. She picked up Dumpling's wings and handed it forward. Her expression was apologetic and extremely sincere. It's all because of the student's lack of discipline that led to such a result. However, the student's strength is low, and I really couldn't watch it just now. The red-tailed phoenix was a divine beast after all. If it insisted on doing something, a mere early-stage 7th-stage cultivator naturally wouldn't be able to stop it. The three elders looked at each other. They saw clearly just now that it was indeed this red-tailed phoenix that suddenly ran out on its own. Chuyu also stopped it, but it was too late. After all, this is your contracted divine beast. Elder Wensi said. You can't absolve yourself from the blame. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. From today onwards, you will be grounded in Mount Pingmin for a month. Mount Pingmin. Chu Liyue pursed her lips. She had been to many places in the academy these few days and had a certain understanding of the academy, but why hadn't she heard of this place before? A month? That's a bit too long. Elder Huafeng said hesitantly. This kid is Wan Zhang's new disciple after all. That old thing hadn't accepted a disciple for several years. Now that he finally found one that caught his eye, he would definitely pamper him like a treasure. If he were to be locked up for a month straight from the get-go, his reputation would be ruined. Elder Wensi paused, then 10 days. It can't be less. This time, the other two elders did not object. Elder Wensi glanced at Dumpling. Dumpling immediately held Chu Liuyue's hand tightly. Are you scared now? Elder Wensi sneered. If I find out you're doing this again, elders, don't worry. This student will definitely discipline it strictly in the future. Chu Liyue said earnestly. Elder Wensi snorted. And you? You've only been here for 1 day and you've already caused such trouble. How could he have misjudged her before? How could he have thought that she was an honest and obedient person? Chu Liyue lowered his head and obediently listened to the elder's lecture. At this time, the sky was slightly bright. She stood with her hands by her side and her head slightly lowered. Only her thick eyelashes and smooth white chin could be seen. She looked like a well-behaved and obedient child again. Elder Wensi suddenly couldn't say the rest of his words. In fact, by this time, he could already tell that this child was not a peaceful child at all. But, such an innocent and pitiful look of admitting her mistake really made people unable to bear to scold her. Forget it. Elder Wensi shook his head. Don't do it again. Chu Liyue heard the softness in his tone and couldn't help but look up and smile in surprise. Thank you, Elder. The young man's face was delicate and clean. This smile was actually bright and dazzling. An extremely familiar feeling suddenly surged in his heart. Elder Wensi's heart skipped a beat. This expression, this smile, it was really similar to. Chu Liyue noticed the subtle change in his expression and immediately retracted the smile on her face without batting an eyelid. Ouyang, take him to Mount Pingmin. Elder Ouyang's eyes widened. Why me? Elder Wensi rolled his eyes at him and was too lazy to talk nonsense. He turned around and left directly. Elder Huafeng patted Elder Ouyang's shoulder sympathetically. It's also your fault that you didn't take good care of this spring eye. But don't worry, we'll definitely put in a good word for you later. Aww. After saying that, he quickly left without waiting for Elder Ouyang's reaction. Soon, only Chu Liyue and Elder Ouyang were left on the top of the mountain. The mountain wind blew with a hint of coolness. Elder Ouyang came back to his senses and looked at Chu Liyue with incomparable resentment. You brat. Forget it, follow me. At this time, the sky had just brightened. But in the academy, many students had already gotten up and started cultivating. On each mountain, there were students busy with their own things. The assessment at the beginning of the month had just ended, and everyone's spirits were still very high. Those who won wanted to stabilize, and those who lost wanted to fight back. As for the new students, needless to say, they were full of excitement and curiosity. All they thought about was to cultivate well and strive to catch up with their senior brothers and sisters as soon as possible and establish a foothold in the academy. However, at this moment, a strange scene suddenly appeared in the academy. An elder of the academy was leading a young man through the air. They passed through half of the academy and arrived at a mountain peak in the martial artist area. The location of that mountain was relatively remote. Even the students in the martial artist area rarely went there. Most importantly, there was an extremely powerful spirit formation outside the mountain peak. Others could not rashly enter it. At this time, the sudden arrival of these two people naturally attracted the attention of many people. Who is that elder? Why haven't I seen him before? You just came here not long ago, so of course you don't know. That's one of the few weapon refiners in the academy, Elder Ouyang. As soon as these words were said, it immediately caused an uproar. Weapon refiner. Didn't they say that those few rarely come out? Why did they suddenly? Wait. Why does the young man beside him look a little familiar? Ah. I think his name is Chuyu. Yesterday at the Celestial Physician assessment, he seemed to have performed very well. Why did a Celestial Physician student come here with a weapon refiner elder? At this time, Luo Shishir and Zhusheng, who had not rested well for the entire night, finally returned after receiving Elder Wenxi's permission. Hearing the discussions of the people around them, the two of them were stunned. They looked at each other and immediately looked forward. Sure enough, in front of another mountain not far away, there were two people standing in the air. Wasn't one of them Chuyu, who was trapped in Thousand Wine Mountain? Why is he here? Both of them were surprised. They had been staying at Elder Wenxi's residence. After a long wait, Elder Wenxi and Zhusheng finally returned. They thought that Chuyu would come back with them, but who knew that just as they asked, Elder Wenxi and Zhusheng's expressions became very strange. They only said that Chuyu was safe and told them to go back without worry. They thought that Chuyu had already returned to his place. Who knew? He actually came here. Suddenly, a voice came from the crowd. Pingmin Mountain has always only punished and imprisoned students who have made big mistakes. What did that newcomer Chuyu do? He went in on his second day at the academy. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1156. Many people, including Luo Shishir, couldn't help but turn around and look at the source of the voice. The one who spoke was a young man who looked to be around 26 or 27 years old. He was tall and had wheat-colored skin. His facial features were strong and his eyes were sharp. Senior brother Mo Ran, you said that Chuyu made a mistake so he's locked up in Pingmin Mountain. Someone asked curiously. When Luo Shishir heard this name, they couldn't help but be shocked. Mo Ran, 9th on the warrior ranking. In the academy, he could definitely be considered to be one of the top students. Therefore, the credibility of his words was higher. That's right. Mo Ran didn't have much expression on his face. Only when he looked at the slender and tall figure in the distance did his expression change. This newcomer really has some ability. His voice was very soft, so almost no one heard it. But after getting his confirmation, everyone was still in an uproar. Made a big mistake. That Chuyu just came, what mistake could he have made? That's right. Moreover, he was personally brought here by Elder Ouyang. Could it be that he got into trouble at the weapon refiner's place? It shouldn't be, right? Didn't everyone never go there? Since he's already entered the academy, he must have heard from the elder that he can't casually go to the weapon refiner's place, right? Also, there's a barrier there, can he go in as he pleases? Everyone was filled with curiosity and their eyes couldn't hide the gossip and excitement. Life in the academy was actually very peaceful on the whole. The sudden arrival of such a fierce person naturally attracted their attention. Senior brother Mo Ran. A gentle female voice sounded. Mo Ran turned his head to look. A man and a woman, two students who looked to be around 20 years old, were rushing to his side. Both of their eyes were filled with worry. Senior brother Mo ran, is it really serious to be locked up in Pengmin Mountain? How long will he be locked up for? Mo ran sized up the two of them without batting an eyelid. How long he'll be locked up depends on the size of his mistake. As for whether it's serious or not, he's the only one who entered the academy in half a year. Luo Shishir and Luo Shishir looked at each other and frowned. How could this be? Previously, when Chuyu was trapped in 10,000 Wine Mountain, they had asked Elder Wen Shi and Elder Wen Shi for help. Logically speaking, it was a blessing that Chuyu could return safely. But, why was he locked up for no reason? Could it be? Was it because he stayed in the 1,000 Wine Mountain during the ban? Other than that, they really couldn't think of any other reason. But he couldn't say such words out loud. After all, the two elders had already reminded him not to reveal anything about what happened yesterday. Suddenly, Zhusheng had a thought. Oh right, does Elder Wanjing know about this? In front of Pengmin Mountain, Chu Luyue and Elder Ouyang stood in the air. As soon as they stood still, an aged voice came from the mountain. Ouyang. Why are you here? This low and deep voice almost caused one's mind to tremble as it fell into one's ears. Even the origin power within one's body began to circulate faster. Chu Luyue was secretly shocked. The strength of the person who spoke was probably unimaginably strong. What else can I do here? Of course, I'm here to send someone to you. Elder Ouyang snorted softly. Lock this kid up for 10 days. The other party was silent for a moment. Chu Luyue only felt that there was a line of sight slowly sweeping across her body from the unseen. In an instant, it was as if everything about her had been exposed and seen clearly by everyone. Through and through. She subconsciously restrained her aura. After a while, the invisible pressure finally dissipated. A freshman. Elder Ouyang had a headache. He just came yesterday. Oh. For some reason, Chu Luyue suddenly felt that the other party seemed to be a little interested in her. This is interesting. The last person who came in so early was, the voice stopped abruptly. It seemed that he wanted to continue, but there seemed to be some taboo, so he could only abruptly end it like this. Chu Luyue subconsciously glanced at Elder Ouyang, only to see that his expression had also frozen for a moment. But this change only lasted for a moment, and Elder Ouyang's expression returned to normal in an instant. If not for Chu Luyue's sharp eyes, she might not have noticed it. A faint doubt arose in her heart. If she guessed correctly, the person that the other party wanted to mention should be the mysterious person whose name was erased from the green cloud roll. Everyone in the academy, from the dean to the elders, and even the students seemed to be secretive about this person. Even until now, Chu Luyue still did not know what that person's name was. According to what they said, that person was no longer in the academy, but there seemed to be traces of that person everywhere in the academy. It was difficult to avoid and ignore. Chu Luyue sighed softly in her heart. She really did not know what kind of person that person was. All right, I got it. After 10 days, he will be released. As the voice fell, the void in front of the two vibrated, and a stream of light overflowed. Immediately, the boundary formed by the Xian formation quickly opened. Elder Ouyang raised his chin at Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue bowed seriously, then took a deep breath and stepped in. What? You guys locked him up in Pengmin Mountain. Elder Wanjing, who had just finished taking care of the herbs, looked at Elder Huafeng in shock. Are you guys crazy? Elder Huafeng almost threw the wine pot in his hand. You're the one who's crazy. I came over to tell you this out of kindness, why are you scolding me? Aren't you anxious that your disciple is locked up there? Elder Wanjing rushed over angrily. Speak. What's going on? If you don't make it clear and bully my disciple, that kid stayed in Thousand Wine Mountain yesterday." This sentence caused Elder Wan Zheng's face to be stunned for a moment. "What do you mean?" "Humph, it's what you're thinking." Elder Hua Feng straightened his collar and sneered. "Not only that, he just happened to meet Ouyang Lianjun yesterday. Almost all of them were seen. If it weren't for you, this kid would have stayed in Pengmin Mountain for a month." Elder Wan Zheng's breathing stagnated. He never thought that Chu Yu would cause such a big trouble in just one day. But Elder Wan Zheng wanted to say something but stopped. He wanted to defend Chu Yu, but he didn't know where to start. It was because this matter was too serious. Lingshao College had stood in the Divine Ruins world for tens of thousands of years and had recruited countless students. Even now, the number of students in the college was about 3,000. With so many people, how could no one make a mistake? The college had all kinds of punishment methods. Being locked up in Pengmin Mountain was definitely one of the top 3 punishments. If it wasn't a last resort, the elders wouldn't be willing to do this. But now, he had finally accepted a student, and he was sent straight to Pengmin Mountain. Elder Hua Feng chuckled and comforted him. Look on the bright side. Didn't you always want to accept that troublemaker as your disciple? In the end, you didn't succeed. Look at now, Chu Yu is locked up in Pengmin Mountain on the 2nd day of school. At least he's the same as that person. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1157. Elder Wanjing glanced at him with a gloomy look. Elder Hua Feng tactfully shut his mouth. Cough. It's just a joke. Don't mind it, don't mind it. Elder Wanjing suddenly smiled. It's fine. This joke is quite funny. When she comes back later, I'll tell her. She'll definitely like it. Hey. Elder Hua Feng's expression changed. Look at you. I'm not. Fine, I was wrong. I admit my mistake. Looking at Elder Wanzhang's half-smile, Elder Hua Feng regretted it so much that he wanted to slap himself. Who told you to be so talkative? Of all things, you had to mention that scourge. Now, you've dug a hole for yourself. Elder Wanjing finally let it go. However, when he thought of Chu Yu being locked up, he could not help but frown slightly. This child's talent was amazing, and he was very clever. As long as he was taught well, he would definitely be outstanding in the future. Originally, he wanted to let him get on the Qingyun role as soon as possible, but this would probably be delayed. To think that he had even planned what to teach in advance. Elder Wanjing shook his head helplessly. Then, let's wait for him to come out. The news of Chu Luyue being locked up in Pengmin Mountain quickly spread in the academy. Everyone had different reactions and discussed it. But the current Chu Luyue was completely clueless about this. After stepping into the barrier, she saw a 7-story tower halfway up Pengmin Mountain. Her intuition told her that that was where the voice came from, and where she would be locked up. Therefore, she walked all the way forward. When she reached the tower, Chu Luyue stood in front of the door. The surrounding forest was lush and green. There was no one around the tower, and grayish-white mountain rocks were piled up. It seemed that no one had been here for a long time. Or rather, very few people had come. Looking at the black iron door in front of her, Chu Luyue focused and calmed down before walking forward. As soon as she reached the door opened automatically before she could reach out. Creak. In an instant, Chu Luyue even had the illusion that she had opened a dusty object that had been sealed for many years. Come in. An old voice entered her ears. Chu Luyue composed herself and walked in. As soon as he entered, all he could see was darkness. Chu Luyue looked around but could only see blurry black shadows. She frowned. Suddenly, the door behind her slowly closed. Bang! Hearing the sound, she subconsciously turned around to take a look. At this moment, the surroundings suddenly lit up. Her heart skipped a beat. She took a quick glance and saw that the lock on the door seemed to have rusted. There are a total of 7 floors here. Which floor do you want to go to? The voice continued to echo in his ears. She turned around and looked forward again. Inside the spacious and empty hall, 7 large doors floated silently. The door glowed faintly, reflecting a sacred and majestic image on the floor paved with black jade. Chu Liyue felt as if his heart was being squeezed tightly by something. Even his breathing became difficult. That was an involuntary reaction when facing a powerful force. Although the 7 doors looked ordinary, Chu Liyue knew very well that the power they contained was not something she could imagine. She was even calmer at times like these. Her gaze swept across the 7 doors one by one. Actually, the 7 doors were exactly the same. From the outside, there was no difference at all. Chu Liyue wanted to try using her force to test it, but in the end, she did not do so. In a place like this, it was better to be honest. The surroundings were silent. Chu Liyue knew that the other party was waiting for her to make a choice. I choose. She hesitated for a moment, then pointed to the 2nd door on the right. Here. After a while, the voice sounded again. Why? This time, the voice seemed to have a trace of surprise and astonishment. Chu Liyue blinked. Why? What other reason could there be? Wasn't it just a random choice? But of course, she could not say that out loud. So, she paused for a moment and deliberated. I can't choose. Chu Liyue had only asked casually, but she did not expect the other party to fall silent after she spoke. This made her heart sink slowly. Could it be that she had really chosen something that she could not choose? I'll give you a second chance. That voice sounded again. Choose carefully. Chu Liyue nodded respectfully and cautiously. Your student understands. Then, the 7 doors suddenly shone brightly. The dazzling light forced Chu Liyue to raise her hand to cover her eyes. But soon, the light quickly dissipated. Chu Liyue put down her hand and looked forward. Needless to say, the order of the 7 doors had changed. Choose. The person said. Chu Liyue nodded slightly. Her eyes sized up the doors for a moment, then she raised her hand and pointed to the door in the middle. Your student chooses this. Silence. Chu Liyue suddenly felt a trace of uneasiness in her heart. Did she choose something that was not suitable again? It couldn't be such a coincidence, right? Ha! At this moment, the person suddenly laughed. It seems that it's destined. There was no anger in his tone, as if he had restrained all his emotions. But Chu Liyue's heart sank. It seemed that she had chosen the same door as the previous one. Go in. After 10 days, the door will open automatically and let you out. Chu Liyue put away her thoughts, nodded slightly, and walked forward. She walked to the door in the middle, raised her hand, and pushed the door open. Her figure quickly disappeared behind the door. After a while, that voice sounded again in a low voice. She actually chose the same door. Really, let's hope that this child can come out of there safely. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1158. Because of the previous 2 choices, Chu Liyue was actually a little nervous when she pushed open the door and entered. But when she entered, she realized that things were not as she had expected. Because what appeared in front of her was a square room. This room was not big, but it could definitely accommodate dozens of people. The four walls were covered with intertwining black and white patterns. Chu Luiyue glanced at it. Apart from barely recognizing the upper left corner of one of the walls, which seemed to be engraved with the school's totem, she could not understand the other patterns. Overall, the lines were messy and without any order, as if someone had dipped a brush in ink and casually sprinkled it on the white rice paper. Other than that, there was nothing else. Chu Luiyue frowned and walked to the middle. The door behind her closed automatically. Chu Luiyue did not pay attention to it. Anyway, no matter what, she had to stay here for 10 days. After looking around carefully and confirming that there was indeed nothing out of the ordinary here, Chu Luiyue simply sat on the ground, closed her eyes and began to cultivate. Yes, although there were no windows here, it was not stuffy. Just like outside, there was an abundance of heaven and earth force. Since she could not do anything here, she might as well cultivate. Just as she was about to close her eyes and begin, with a plop, a small creature suddenly fell to the ground. It was Dumpling. Looking at the soaked dumpling on the ground in front of her, Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment. She had already called Dumpling back earlier and did not call it just now. Why did it come out on its own? Dumpling. She called out. Plop plop, Dumpling flapped its wings frantically, as if trying to shake off the water on its body and dry itself. Chu Luiyue stared at it for a while and could not help but remind it. Dumpling, you can use fire to dry yourself. Dumpling paused and looked up at her with eager eyes. Chu Luiyue's pupils suddenly shrank. Because in Tuanzi's eyes, there was a flash of silver in a flash. Is that Tianlei? She knew that Dumpling had taken advantage of the previous opportunity to devour a lot of Tianlei to stimulate her bloodline power, but she didn't expect this to happen. Dumpling, are you all right? Dumpling shook its head and began to flap its wings frantically. So much Tianlei is swimming around its body, and it hasn't been completely absorbed yet. If he hastily summons the flames now, I'm afraid even he won't be able to control them once they start burning. The legendary three-eyed eagle said coldly. Chu Luiyue finally understood. He looked at Dumpling, who was working very hard on the ground, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Then, how long will it take to completely digest the power this time? That depends on it. It could be as short as 1 day, or as long as 3 days. Chu Luiyue breathed a sigh of relief. Because we chose to attack when Tianlei's power was at its most abundant, it devoured a lot this time. However, if we want to completely stimulate its bloodline power, we still have to do as we said before. It would have been fine if he didn't mention this, but now that he mentioned it, Chu Luiyue had a headache. He had only stayed on Thousand Wine Mountain once, and he was locked up here for 10 days. If he really stayed there for a month, Chu Luiyue felt that he might be expelled. Just don't be discovered. As if guessing Chu Luiyue's thoughts, the legendary three-eyed eagle said calmly. Chu Luiyue. Do I look like someone with such ability? Thousand Wine Mountain was heavily guarded. How was she going to go there for a month without being discovered? Chu Luiyue looked at Dumpling and suddenly felt that it was fine the way it was now. Wasn't that the red-tailed phoenix that had won against Luin Tong? Of course you are. The legendary three-eyed eagle gave an affirmative answer. Chu Luiyue was speechless for a moment. For a moment, she didn't know whether to be happy that the legendary three-eyed eagle thought so highly of her, or worried about how she could complete this ridiculous task. She shook her head. She still chose to suppress this thought. She closed her eyes, held her breath, and began to absorb the heaven and earth force around her. Streams of origin power condensed and poured into her body. These forces flowed through her limbs and bones, and finally gathered in her dantian. Time passed bit by bit, and Chu Luiyue's aura continued to strengthen. However, what she didn't know was that the walls around her were also quietly changing. The seemingly irregular lines seemed to be attracted by some kind of power and slowly moved. Without a sound, they transformed into various strange diagrams. As these lines fluctuated, the space around Chu Luiyue seemed to be stirred. Layers of pressure quickly superimposed in these fluctuations. At this moment, Chu Luiyue closed her eyes and focused all her attention on cultivation. If she opened her eyes, she would see that around her, there were black cracks mixed in the distorted space. And that terrifying and heavy fluctuation was like a tide, slowly and firmly surging toward her. However, just as those ripples were about to reach Chu Luiyue, they suddenly stopped. Then, a wave of power took a step forward. Almost at the same time, Chu Luiyue's body was suffused with a bright golden light. Pure gold armor. Sensing this light and aura, the aura that had been accumulating on that power dissipated in an instant. Then, that power gently turned, and the surrounding power seemed to be affected as well. One by one, they removed that terrifying pressure and lingered around Chu Luiyue. It seemed to be intimate and nostalgic. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1159. Amidst these silent waves, Chu Luiyue's speed of devouring the force began to increase. She seemed to have entered an extremely strange state. Even though her eyes were closed, she could still subtly sense everything around her. She could vaguely feel that there was something flowing slowly around her, passing through her body. During this process, a portion of the force quietly entered her body. At this moment, she suddenly realized that the force of heaven and earth here was extremely pure. There was almost no need to refine it, and it could be used by her. Her body was like a sponge, crazily absorbing the force around her. Moreover, this speed was also continuously increasing. Chu Luiyue was originally a little worried that her body could not withstand such a terrifying force infusion since she was only at the beginning of rank 7. But soon, she realized that she was worrying too much. Because from start to finish, her body did not feel uncomfortable at all. The rich force flowing in her yuan meridian did not cause her any pain or discomfort. Instead, it nourished her yuan meridian and made it even more supple and smooth. Chu Luiyue could even clearly feel the aura around her body increasing. Could it be that the force here is special? Such a thought flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind. But it did not seem to be that simple. Chu Luiyue quickly suppressed this thought and focused on cultivating. Dumpling, who was beside her, had unknowingly stopped moving and was lying on the ground tiredly. Only the flickering silver tian lei on its body showed that it was not as harmless as it looked. Qingming Square. Elder Bo Yan was standing with his hands behind his back, his gaze sweeping across the people in front of him. The people standing here were the people who had discussed that matter in the hall. But compared to that time, there were obviously a few people missing. For example, Wei Shiping was not here. But there were still a dozen elders standing beside him, so overall, there were quite a number of people. And the one closest to Elder Bo Yan was Rongxiu. This old man will not say any unnecessary words. For this trip, I will leave it to all of you. Elder Bo Yan cupped his hands. Everyone agreed in unison. If you encounter any danger this time, Rongxiu. Before Elder Bo Yan could finish, he saw Rongxiu's expression change slightly as he looked in a certain direction. His deep phoenix eyes narrowed, and his thin scarlet lips curved into an extremely faint and helpless smile. This is really, Rongxiu, what's wrong? Elder Bo Yan asked curiously. Rongxiu retracted his gaze and shook his head with a faint smile. Nothing. Elder Bo Yan looked in the direction he was looking at. That was the martial artist's area. Everything was normal. Elder Bo Yan frowned. Although nothing could be seen from Rongxiu's face, he still felt that there should be something. It was the same the previous time. It was as if there was something in the academy that was affecting Rongxiu's thoughts. He had always been a cold and indifferent person, so there weren't many things that could interest him. But since he didn't want to say, others naturally wouldn't ask. At this moment, Elder Wensi arrived late. Elder Bo Yen smiled and asked, "Wensi, if you didn't come, you wouldn't have made it." Elder Wensi coughed. "I had something to do at the last minute, so I was delayed." Elder Bo Yen looked at him and his expression changed slightly. "What's wrong?" Elder Wensi wasn't someone who liked to be late, and it seemed that there really was something. Elder Wensi hesitated for a moment, but still decided to tell the truth. After all, they would know about this sooner or later. "Actually, it's not a big deal, but a student made a small mistake and was locked up in Pengmin Mountain." As soon as he said this, everyone looked over. Pengmin Mountain was a place that wouldn't let people in easily. This student. Could it be that he made a small mistake? Oh. Who? Elder Bo Yen frowned slightly. It had been a long time since the academy had issued such a punishment, so that student must have done something that crossed the academy's bottom line. Elder Wensi sighed. He didn't come down in time yesterday and stayed in Thousand Wine Mountain for a long time. The expressions of the elders changed slightly. Which student is so daring? Elder Bo Yan's brows furrowed even tighter. Regarding Thousand Wine Mountain, the academy had repeatedly ordered that no one was allowed to stay in Thousand Wine Mountain during the forbidden period. How could there be a student who did this? It's Chu Yu. Elder Wensi lowered his voice a little and then quickly added. But that child didn't do it on purpose. He just happened to return late for a while and was trapped in Thousand Wine Mountain. After receiving the news, Hua Feng and I immediately went to bring him out. Elder Wensi was slightly shocked when he said this. For some reason, he actually unconsciously explained for Chu Yu, as if he didn't want him to be punished too heavily. I see. Since you've already punished him, then let's forget about this matter for now. Fortunately, Elder Bo Yen didn't pursue this matter further, which made Elder Wensi secretly heave a sigh of relief. After coming back to his senses, he was stunned for a moment. It was probably because he was the one who recruited that kid, so he couldn't bear to do it. Anyway, when he thought of the youth being reprimanded and lowering his head to admit his mistake, he inexplicably couldn't bear to be ruthless. Elder Wensi took a deep breath and suppressed these chaotic thoughts. Rong Xiu, who was at the side, had a faint expression on his face. His eyelids drooped slightly as a faint light flashed across his eyes. Pengmin Mountain. Staying there, at least for a period of time, was safe. But Rong Xiu's eyes moved slightly, concealing the emotions in his eyes. This small episode didn't attract too much attention. A student being locked in Pengmin Mountain for a few days, in their opinion, was actually not a big deal. Let's go. An elder shouted and took the lead to move. He flew towards the gate of the academy. The others followed closely behind. Rong Xiu glanced at Pengmin Mountain without batting an eyelid, and then left as well. The group of figures quickly disappeared. Inside the 7-story tower of Pengmin Mountain. In the main hall, the 7 doors floated quietly. Time passed little by little. Finally, the old voice sounded again. However, this time, there was a hint of doubt in his voice. Logically speaking, that kid should have already escaped. Why is there still no movement until now? In the empty and quiet main hall, no one answered. Another period of time passed. The 7 doors was still as usual. These days, the children who can cause trouble are all so powerful, the man couldn't help but murmur in a low voice. Not coming out after such a long time, he really has some ability. In a strange space, Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged with her eyes closed. The vast and tyrannical power around her constantly poured into her body. The lines on the 4 walls flowed lightly with her breathing. It was as if her whole body had merged with this place. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. An old and low voice came into her ears. "Kid, time's up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network." Chapter 1160. Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes. A strange and bright light flashed quickly from the bottom of her eyes. The sharpness of that moment made people not dare to look directly at it. But this light quickly dissipated, and she returned to her lazy and indifferent appearance. She stretched and moved her muscles and bones. Her body, which had been sitting for a long time, made a crisp sound. Time was up, Chu Luiyue thought faintly. 10 days had passed just like that. But why didn't she feel anything at all? During the whole process, the only thing she did was cultivate. It seemed that in the blink of an eye, it was already time to go out. Chu Luiyue stood up and looked around. Everything was the same as when she first came. What she didn't know was that the moment she opened her eyes, the lines on the four walls had already returned to their original appearance. She naturally couldn't see anything. She picked up Dumpling beside her. Probably because it had completely digested the power, Dumpling's body no longer had the flickering silver tianlei. Moreover, the color of its wings seemed to have become more intense than before. Perhaps, this was a sign that the power of the bloodline had been activated. Chu Luiyue thought as she walked over to open the door. However, just as her hand was about to touch the door, she suddenly paused, looked back, and narrowed her eyes slightly. She actually wanted to continue staying here for a while. What should she do? For some reason, she felt very comfortable cultivating here. The surrounding energy naturally entered her body, nourishing her flesh, blood, tendons, and bones, strengthening her aura, and during this process, she didn't feel any discomfort. Everything seemed to flow naturally. It was as if these powers were supposed to be hers. This feeling was very subtle, and it was something she had never experienced before. "Senior," she suddenly opened her mouth, but stopped midway. That voice came from outside the door. "What's wrong?" Chu Luiyue's thoughts turned, and she smiled lightly, changing the topic of the remaining half of her sentence. "Thank you for taking care of me during this period." That person snorted softly. After entering this door, he couldn't interfere, especially when this kid chose this one. From the beginning to the end, he didn't even lift a finger. How could he take care of her? "Just come out." Chu Luiyue took a deep breath, took one last look, and turned to leave. A white light flashed in front of her eyes, and Chu Luiyue subconsciously narrowed her eyes. After her eyes adjusted to the light, she saw the surroundings clearly. The main hall in front of her eyes was empty, exactly the same as when she came. She glanced back. The 7 doors, there were still no changes. It was as if the 10 days he had spent in there were just like a dream. Go. After coming out of the door, Chu Luiyue couldn't tell where the voice came from. It was as if the entire main hall, the voice of the voice, fell clearly in the end. She didn't. Chu Luiyue thought for a while and still bowed in the direction of 7 fan door. Students of you with that, she turned around and lifted her foot to leave. However, as soon as she took a step, that voice sounded again, and it seemed to carry some confusion and doubt. Chu Luiyue immediately stopped, stood where she was, and respectfully turned back, allowing that person's knife-like sharp gaze to sweep over her. "Senior, is there anything else?" That person's voice sounded a little strange. "Your aura has strengthened." Chu Luiyue was stunned. Was there a need to ask? She had been concentrating on cultivating in there for 10 days. Wasn't it normal for her strength to increase? But since that person asked, there was obviously something wrong. She pondered for a moment and said, "Student has been concentrating on cultivating these few days." That person didn't say anything for a while. Chu Liu's heart was pounding. That answer didn't seem right. "Forget it, you can go now." After a while, that voice sounded again. But Chu Liu keenly felt that the other party's attitude towards her seemed to be a little different. She couldn't tell the specifics, but she just had this feeling. She pursed her lips and bowed to leave. The door opened automatically. After she stepped out, the door closed automatically behind her. Bang! Inside the tower, the hall was silent. A low murmur sounded. It was filled with confusion. This kid. Could it be that she likes him? Outside the door, Chu Luiyue looked back and sighed softly. Although the senior in charge of guarding was a little strange, but if only she could come a few more times. If Elder Wenxi and the others knew that she came here, not only did she not learn any lessons, but also tasted the sweetness and wanted to come again, what kind of expression would they have? She felt an itch in her neck. Chu Luiyue tapped Dumpling's head. "Okay, I know you still want to go. But I have to think of a way first. If you don't listen to me like last time." She glanced at Dumpling coldly. Dumpling immediately nodded like she was pounding garlic. "I won't make trouble. I'll listen to my master." Chu Luiyue nodded in satisfaction and flew away. "I said, I don't know when Chu Yu will come back." Zhong Sun suppressed the anger in his heart and said word by word. "This is our residence, please leave first. When he comes back, I will tell him that you have been here. No need to be so troublesome, we can just wait for him here." The few young men opposite him laughed arrogantly. "Senior brother Zhong Sun, why are you so nervous? We are just here to learn from Chu Yu. I heard that he is very talented in celestial physician, we want to come and see. Are you going to stop us?" The young man standing at the front said lazily. Zhong Sun frowned. A few days ago, these people suddenly came over, saying that they wanted to learn from Chu Yu. Since he was not here, they simply came every day, starting in the morning and only leaving at night. And Chu Yu's residence had long been turned into a mess by them. These people were not old, and according to seniority, Zhong Sun was their senior brother. But their attitude towards Zhong Sun was not very respectful. It was because their background was not to be underestimated. These people were all Lu Yintong's junior brothers. They suddenly came here, and it was obvious who ordered them to do so. That night, Zhong Sun did not go to Thousand Wine Mountain, so he did not know what happened. But from the words of the people later, he knew that Lu Yintong insisted on having a divine beast contract competition with Chu Yu, and in the end, she lost completely. This time, Chu Yu had completely offended Lu Yintong and her small group. That was why a few people took the initiative to provoke him. "Senior brother Zhong Sun, this has nothing to do with you. You should stay out of it." The young man in front smiled casually. Since he was accepted as a disciple by Elder Wanjing, he must have some ability, don't you think? If he doesn't even dare to accept our challenge, wouldn't he be too cowardly? Zhong Sun was about to argue when a clear voice with a smile suddenly sounded. "Okay, I'll accept." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1161. Hearing this, they turned around to look. A young man in a green robe had unknowingly appeared behind them. His figure was a little thin, but he was very tall and straight. His face was delicate and his eyes were clean. He looked over with a faint smile on his lips. He seemed to be calm and collected, with a hint of solitude. The young men were stunned for a moment. Among them, some were at Thousand Wine Mountain that day, and some were not. But they were not very familiar with Chu Yu. At this moment, when they suddenly saw him, they realized that this young man actually had such a bearing. Chu Yu, you're back. Zhong Sun was the first to react and immediately greeted him. Walking up to him, he quickly sized up Chu Luiyue with a worried expression. Are you okay? Being locked up in Pingmin Mountain was one of the most severe punishments in the academy. He had just arrived at the academy and encountered such a thing. He must be feeling terrible. Looking at Zhong Sun's worried eyes, Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and a trace of warmth appeared in his heart. Senior brother Zhong Sun, don't worry, I'm fine. Or should I say, especially fine. Zhong Sun thought that she said that on purpose to make him feel at ease. But after taking a closer look, he realized that the young man in front of him had a relaxed expression and a smile in his eyes. It seemed that he was really fine. He heaved a sigh of relief. That's good, you're Chu Yu. A voice of unknown meaning was heard. Chu Luiyue looked up. There were a total of 3 people opposite him. They didn't look old, only about 20 years old. The one who spoke was the one standing at the front. At this moment, he was crossing his arms and looking at Chu Luiyue presumptuously. The expression in his eyes was indescribable. You were locked up in Pingmin Mountain as soon as you entered the academy. Junior brother Chu Yu's ability is really beyond our reach. Ha! These words were said in a strange tone with a thick sense of sarcasm. Zhong Sun's expression changed slightly. Just as he was about to speak, he was stopped by Chu Luiyue beside him. She took a step forward and nodded with a smile, yes. I think so too. I am indeed much more outstanding than you guys. The laughter on the other side stopped abruptly. But you don't have to be discouraged. After all, sometimes, you just have to give in. Chu Luiyue did not seem to notice the wonderful changes in the expressions of the people opposite him. He smiled and spoke in a light tone. However, the words that came out of his mouth were enough to infuriate him to death. Ha! Both sides were in a deadlock for a moment before the youths seemed to have finally regained their senses. What did you say? Chu Luiyue blinked. It seems that senior brother's hearing is not very good. Then, I'll say it again. When she smiled, she looked clean and harmless. However, the words he spat out were like steel needles that pierced straight into their hearts. I said, you guys are too weak. Now, do you understand? How arrogant. How arrogant. Everyone present, including Zhong Sun, had the same thought when they heard Chu Luiyue's words. Could it be that this kid had gone crazy? Did he know what he was saying? Chu Yu, Zhong Sun's expression also changed. He thought that Chu Yu might not be convinced by these people. Otherwise, he would not have directly accepted their provocation the moment he returned. After all, he was still a teenager. It was normal for him to be young and impetuous. However, he never thought that Chu Yu would actually say such words. However, at this moment, Chu Yu suddenly turned around and winked at him. He chuckled and said, Senior brother, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Zhong Sun was stunned. He could clearly see that the youth's eyes did not have the slightest bit of anger from being provoked. The targeting and provocation of those people did not actually arouse Chu Yu's anger at all. He was completely clear-headed and rational. And under such circumstances, he still said such words, Ha! You have guts. Lu Xian was so angry that he laughed. In the academy, it had been a long time since such an arrogant freshman appeared. Since that's the case, let's have a real competition, how about it? Zhong Sun's heart skipped a beat. In the next moment, Lu Xian waved his wrist and a black jade token suddenly appeared. Lu Xian, today, issued a challenge to Chu Yu. Chu Yu, do you dare to accept? Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes. Zhong Sun hurriedly said, Chu Yu. Don't agree. You can't accept this challenge. Chu Luiyue looked over. Why? Zhong Sun was secretly anxious and explained, because once you accept this challenge, it means that no one will be able to interfere with your match. Moreover, as long as either of you doesn't agree to the end of the competition, then, the competition will continue. In other words, as long as they don't kill each other, the two sides of the competition can beat each other up as much as they want. It was also because of this that very few people in the academy would carry out such a challenge. Those who would do so usually had a lot of grudges in private. Now, Chiyu had completely offended the other party. Once he agreed, then, senior brother Zhong Sun, do you think that I will be the one being beaten up? Chu Luiyue asked softly. Zhong Sun looked at her eyes and suddenly had a thought. Could it be that? He was confident that he could win against Lu Ziyan. Facing that pair of clear and calm eyes, Zhong Sun suddenly couldn't say the words of dissuasion in his throat. Chu Yu, he didn't seem to be as young and immature as he looked on the surface. Senior brother, don't worry. After Chu Luiyue finished speaking, he looked at the other side. Lu Ziyan raised his eyebrows. What, you don't dare to accept? Chu Luiyue smiled. They had already bullied her to her doorstep. If she still allowed herself to be trampled on, who knew how much she would be bullied in the future? In any case, she had already offended Lu Yintong, not to mention these few lackeys that Lu Yintong had sent over. Chu Luiyue admitted that she had never taken the initiative to provoke anyone, much less deliberately provoke or offend anyone. Lu Yintong had taken the initiative to find trouble with her, and now there was no end to it. Even if she went to lower herself now, the other party wouldn't give her any face. Instead, they would only step on her and trample on her at will. So, from the beginning, she didn't feign civility with these people. The only thing she needed to do was to use this opportunity to tell everyone that she wasn't to be trifled with. Chu Luiyue took out his black jade token. Yes. According to the rules, when the students of the academy carried out such a challenge, they must carry it out in the Qingming Square. So, the few of them came here together. The entire square occupied an extremely large area and was very spacious. They had only come here to occupy a small piece of land. But even so, they still attracted the attention of many people. Because usually, the Qingming Square was not allowed to casually go over. So, when a few people suddenly appeared in the empty square, it naturally attracted the attention of many people. Chu Luiyue walked over and stood still. Lu Ziyan stood opposite him. The two of them faced each other from a distance. Junior brother Chu Yu, I think no one has told you before that when you don't have strength, you must be cautious and humble. Otherwise, you won't even know how you died. Lu Ziyan sneered. Chu Luiyue's lips curved slightly. Bang! A medicinal cauldron fell heavily. Senior brother Lu, it's not too late to say these words after you win against me. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1162. Outside the competition area where the two of them were, a group of people had already gathered. Isn't that Lu Ziyan and Chu Yu? What are they going to do? Challenge. Since they're on the Qingming Square, then it must be. TSK, why are these two fighting for no reason? You don't know. Didn't Chu Yu offend Lu Yintong before? That Lu Ziyan seems to be a younger brother of her family branch. Usually in the academy, this Lu Ziyan often relies on Lu Yintong to act arrogantly. Then wouldn't Chu Yu be in danger? Even if his talent is not bad, he seems to be an 8th grade celestial physician. And Lu Ziyan just broke through the 9th grade not long ago, right? What is Chu Yu thinking? He actually agreed to this challenge that he will definitely lose. This kind of competition, the elders will not easily interfere. Everyone was discussing. All kinds of voices fell into the ears. Chu Liuyue's expression did not change, as if she was unmoved. Lu Ziyan also took out his medicine cauldron. "TSK, then I'll let you lose clearly." On the square, the two of them faced each other. In front of them, there was a medicine cauldron. Lu Ziyan took the lead. Now, he was a 9th-grade celestial physician. Although he could only refine low-grade pills, dealing with a mere 8th-grade Chuyu, wasn't it a piece of cake? In fact, long before he came, he had already prepared the pills to refine. Therefore, even the medicinal ingredients were prepared. He took out the medicinal ingredients one by one and placed them on the side. Then, he placed one hand on the medicine cauldron. Boom! A cluster of blue flames burned. Then, he waved his sleeve lightly, and the medicinal ingredients flew up one after another and fell into the medicine cauldron. The unique bitter fragrance of the medicinal ingredients quickly spread out. However, in stark contrast to him, Chu Liyue on the opposite side had not made a move until now. She just stood there with one hand on her arm, looking lazy. Looking at that gaze, it seemed to be looking at Lu Ziyan. Look. What's so good about Lu Ziyan refining pills? Many people looked at each other, revealing a blank expression. The competition had already begun, why was Chuyu still not moving? Blindly watching others refine pills, could it be that he could directly win? Chuyu, do you have a problem? Zhong Sun frowned and asked worriedly. If you lack medicinal herbs, I will go to the Medicine Wind Valley to get them for you. Lu Ziyan came prepared, but Chuyu did not. He had just come out of Pingmin Mountain, and had directly agreed to this challenge. It was likely that he lacked a lot of things. Chu Liyue tilted his head and smiled. Thank you, senior brother Zhong Sun. However, I don't lack medicinal herbs. You can rest assured. How could Zhong Sun really be at ease? Even if he didn't lack medicinal ingredients, he would still lose to Lu Ziyan if he refined an 8th-grade medicinal pill. According to the current situation, if Chuyu wanted to win, there was only one way. Lu Ziyan had failed to refine the pill. Only in this way could Chuyu win. However, this was a challenge. As long as Zhong Sun was unwilling to end the competition and continue to refine, Chuyu could do nothing about it. If Zhong Sun still managed to refine it in the end, then this match, Chuyu would still lose. Zhong Sun looked at the young man in the arena. His heart was anxious and his lips were dry. At this time, why didn't Chuyu seem to be anxious at all? Lu Ziyan threw in a few more medicinal herbs and refined them in an orderly manner. Taking advantage of the free time, he even raised his head to take a look. Chuyu, who was opposite him, had not moved. Even the medicinal cauldron was empty. He couldn't help but sneer. Junior brother Chuyu, in this challenge, are you going to keep watching me refine pills? Let me remind you that the competition has already begun. It's too late for you to admit defeat now. Chu Liyue raised his eyebrows. Senior brother Lu, don't misunderstand. I'm really not interested in watching you refine pills. Her tone was very sincere and very serious. To be honest, this Lu Ziyan's alchemy level was not very good. Just that technique alone was enough to make her look down on it. If she really stared at it for a long time, she was worried that it would affect her performance. Lu Ziyan's face darkened. When the competition is over, let's see if you can still be so presumptuous. Chu Liyue didn't seem to care about this warning at all. After Lu Ziyan threw in a few more medicinal herbs, she finally retracted her gaze and chuckled. So senior brother Lu wants to refine a large success pill. Lu Ziyan's hand trembled slightly, and the last medicinal herb in his hand was accidentally shaken into the cauldron. He hurriedly took out that part, but most of it had already been refined in an instant. Even if his reaction was fast, he still couldn't completely handle it. Fortunately, this shouldn't affect the pill formation. Lu Ziyan raised his head to look, his heart was shocked and angry. You watched for so long just now because you want to know what kind of pill I'm going to refine. Yes. Chu Luyue chuckled, directly confirming his guess, but immediately frowned slightly, as if somewhat disappointed. I thought. Forget it, this will save me a lot of trouble. At first, she thought that Lu Ziyan would refine some kind of powerful pill, but who knew that after all this time, it was only an inferior 9th grade pill. Moreover, it was the kind that was more forced. This made Chu Luyue feel a little bored, but considering that the opponent's level wasn't high, she could win more easily. Chu Luyue's mood improved a lot. She didn't deliberately hide her emotions and thoughts, and Lu Ziyan saw it clearly on the opposite side. In an instant, the anger in his heart soared and burned. This brat. He actually looked down on me. Boom. Before he had time to speak, Chu Luyue on the opposite side finally moved. A thick and hot red flame instantly filled the entire medicinal cauldron. Then, almost without any delay, she threw in a series of medicinal herbs. The whole process was like moving clouds in flowing water, and her technique was perfect. Mobile users, please browse and read, a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1163. The moment she made her move, the originally noisy crowd instantly quieted down. Among the onlookers, not all were celestial physician. But even if they were martial artists and Xian masters, those who could enter Lingxiao College were all top geniuses in the world. They more or less had a certain understanding of celestial physician. And they could also distinguish between good and bad alchemy skills. So, when Chu Luyue started refining, they were all shocked on the spot. The smoothness of his movements and control of the medicinal herbs were clearly better than Lu Ziyan's. Lu Ziyan was also shocked. Wasn't Chu Yu an 8th grade celestial physician? But the strength he displayed clearly far exceeded that. Lu Ziyan closed his eyes and looked again. Maybe Chu Yu was just bluffing and didn't have any ability at all. When he saw Chu Yu easily separating the medicinal herbs and refining them, the last trace of fantasy in Lu Ziyan's heart was completely shattered. At this time, even if he was unwilling, he had to admit that Chu Yu was indeed capable. A trace of panic faintly appeared in his heart. Maybe Chu Yu could really win against him. Suddenly, a burning pain came. Lu Ziyan took a breath of cold air and looked down. Only then did he realize that he was so distracted that he forgot to control the flame in the medicinal cauldron. Just now, it was the flame that leaped out that burned his hand. He wasn't injured, but the medicinal herbs in the medicinal cauldron were already ruined. Looking at the pile of things that were already charred black, Lu Ziyan was burning with anger. He wanted to kick the medicinal cauldron away and smash it on Chu Yu's face. Bang! He fiercely placed his hand on the medicinal cauldron and cleared out all the medicinal herbs. Some ashes flew and scattered. Seeing this scene, many people secretly exchanged glances. This Lu Ziyan's mental endurance was not good. Chu Yu was just standing there. He had just started refining, but he actually accidentally destroyed the medicinal herbs that he had just refined. TSK. If Chu Yu really won, who knew what kind of expression he would have? Lu Ziyan took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Although his previous effort was wasted, he still had spare medicinal herbs in his hands. What he had to do next was to refine his medicinal pill as soon as possible. He began to refine medicine again. Chu Luyue only needed to glance at Lu Ziyan's situation from the corner of his eyes to know what was going on. The corners of her lips curled up slightly as she found it a little funny. He really didn't know why Lu Yintong asked him to come. Did she overestimate Lu Ziyan or underestimate Chu Luyue? He had clearly lost once on the Million Wine Mountain, yet he was still so careless. Wasn't this the same as sending herself to her doorstep to win? Chu Luyue placed the rest of the herbs in an orderly manner. After coming out of Pingmin Mountain, she clearly felt that her strength had increased. Vaguely, he seemed to have touched the threshold of a higher level. Moreover, her spirit also seemed to have improved a lot, which made it easier for her to refine medicine. Time passed slowly. Outside the square, the number of onlookers had also increased. On one hand, there weren't many challenges in the academy, so each time, it would attract a lot of attention. On the other hand, the name Chiyu had been mentioned a lot in the academy recently. As soon as he came out of Pingmin Mountain, he began to challenge others, and his opponent was obviously stronger than him. Even if everyone wanted to ignore or forget this freshman, it was a little difficult. After receiving the news, Luo Shishir and the others also rushed over. Luo Yanlin even came with them. It's really Chuyu. After seeing the person standing in the square clearly, Shuxing couldn't help but exclaim. What is he thinking? Doesn't he know the rules of the challenge? If the place had made up his mind to mess with him, he was afraid that, Shishir, your friend is not very peaceful. Luo Yanlin stared at the field for a while and gave an evaluation. It was rare to see such a student who could cause trouble. Luo Shishir pursed her lips. It's Lu Yintong and the others who want to bully him, that's why he resisted. That day on Million Wine Mountain, it was clearly those people who provoked him and insisted on a competition. After losing, they were unwilling to accept it and sent others to deliberately cause trouble for Chuyu. From the beginning to the end, Chuyu didn't do anything wrong. If it was someone else, they might not be in the same situation as Chuyu and would have been bullied to death. The strong are respected, there's no bullying. Luo Yanlin said lightly. He obviously knows this principle himself. That was why he had agreed to carry out this challenge. Thinking of this, Luo Yanlin suddenly laughed. This kid is a little interesting. If he could really win this round, it wouldn't be others bullying him, it would be him, killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Buzz. Suddenly, there was a fluctuation in Chu Liuyue's medicine cauldron. A strong medicinal fragrance spread out from it. Chu Yu is about to form the pill. Someone in the crowd shouted. Almost at the same time, there was a similar movement on Lu Xian's side. The burning flames continued to rise. A spherical pill was faintly discernible. Lu Xian is about to succeed too. I wonder who will succeed first, so what if Chuyu succeeds first? An 8th grade pill can't be compared to a 9th grade pill. Look at him, he doesn't seem to be in a hurry at all. I wonder if he still has some tricks up his sleeve. Tricks up his sleeve. Could it be that he can also refine a 9th grade pill? The crowd roared with laughter. At this moment, Chu Luyue on the stage suddenly slapped the medicine cauldron. A cluster of flames wrapped around a fist-sized pill and suddenly flew up. At the same time, she waved her sleeve and several medicinal herbs fell into the medicine cauldron one after another. This sudden move shocked everyone on the spot. What is he trying to do? He hasn't finished refining the pill and he's already out of the cauldron. No. He's going to refine the second pill. He hasn't even formed the first pill, how can he refine the second one? Suddenly, a shocked cry came from the crowd, no. He's going to fuse the pill. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1164. Luo Shishir frowned and couldn't help but murmur. What is pill fusion? Pill fusion is a special method used by celestial physician when refining pills. I heard that it can fuse 2 or even more pills and finally condense them into a single pill. This way, all the medicinal effects can be gathered together to the greatest possible extent, thus increasing the grade of the pill. Luo Yanlin patiently explained from the side. Although he wasn't a celestial physician, he had stayed in the academy for a few years and still had some understanding of this. Increasing the grade of the pill. Luo Shirshi's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that he really intends to refine a 9th-grade medicinal pill? He wants to win, so it's understandable that he would do this. Luo Yanlin laughed. Previously, I thought that if he could win, he could only hope that something would happen to Lu Ziyan. I didn't expect him to have this second option. In the beginning, he didn't take this Chu Yu to heart, and even had some natural hostility because Luo Shirshir was especially concerned about him. But now, he found that this Chu Yu was indeed quite interesting. He had only been in the academy for a short time, and he had already made such a big name. Putting aside the previous things for the time being, as long as he could win today, he would definitely be famous in the entire academy. Luo Shirshir and the others' faces were filled with joy. So, as long as he can succeed, the chances of winning are also very high. Luo Yanlin saw the smile on her face and couldn't help but reach out his hand, lightly flicked her forehead, and snorted, "Don't be so optimistic. I only said that he wanted to fuse the pill, but I didn't say that he would definitely be able to do it. One had to know that when refining pills, the most important thing was to be completely focused. If you want to fuse the pill, you must at least be able to multitask." He was an 8th-grade celestial physician. If he wanted to defeat Lu Ziyan, he would have to refine at least 2 superior 8th-grade pills. Luo Shirshir and the others' expressions froze. To refine 2 superior 8th-grade pills at the same time, not to mention an 8th-grade celestial physician, even a 9th grade would be quite difficult, right? In any case, so far, I have never heard of an 8th-grade celestial physician being able to complete the pill fusion. Luo Yanlin's words made their hearts sink, and they all looked at the field worriedly. That 16-year-old boy, could he really do it? Chu Luyue separated a ball of flame from his side and wrapped it around the pill he had just refined. About half an arm's length above the cauldron, he quietly refined it and carried out the final refinement. On the other side, she was still continuously adding new medicinal herbs into the medicinal cauldron. When Lu Ziyan looked up, he saw such a scene. He gritted his teeth as the hatred in his heart grew. "You overestimate yourself," he cursed under his breath. "An 8th-grade celestial physician, do you know what it means to fuse pills? Forcing it was just showing off. In the end, he might not even be able to refine a single 8th-grade medicinal pill." However, as time passed, nothing out of the ordinary happened on the other side. Throughout the entire process, Chu Luyue did it in an orderly manner. The pill at the top was constantly being condensed, and the medicinal herbs below were also being refined one after another. Soon, Chu Luyue actually began to smoothly refine the second pill. Lu Ziyan forced himself to retract his gaze and put all his attention on his own pill. However, in his heart, there was always a faint sense of anxiety and uneasiness, as if something bad was about to happen. When his mind was in chaos, the flame in the medicinal cauldron also fluctuated. His heart jumped fiercely, and he quickly stabilized it. Fortunately, the pills seemed to be fine. However, Lu Ziyan's heart still sank. When refining pills, the last step was very important, and it required even more concentration than before. If there was a slight mistake, it would cause irreparable consequences and affect the quality of the entire pill. More seriously, it could even cause the pill to be destroyed. Although this one of his pills could succeed, the quality was, gritting his teeth, Lu Ziyan still controlled the flame and carried out the final roasting and refining. Wang! An astonishing fluctuation reverberated in the medicinal cauldron. At the same time, a rich medicinal fragrance filled the air. A vermilion red pill flew out from the medicinal cauldron. Lu Ziyan was already prepared. With a wave of his wrist, he set up a barrier above. That pill fiercely hit the barrier. Then it quickly bounced back. Lu Ziyan waved his sleeve and quickly kept that pill into a jade box. Gotcha! The jade box closed. The pill was formed. holding the jade box in his hand, Lu Ziyan let out a sigh of relief. It was daunting but not dangerous. This pill was finally formed. Now, the outcome of the competition depended on Chu Yu on the opposite side. Looking at Lu Ziyan's expression, everyone guessed that he should have successfully refined the large success pill. In other words, the current him had a 9th grade lower grade pill as a foundation. If Chu Yu failed to refine the pill, or the final pill was not 9th grade lower grade, then the winner of this competition would be Lu Ziyan. But if he succeeded in refining the pill, and the grade was higher than Lu Ziyan's, then, some people thought of this and could not help but secretly shake their heads. How could it be? A mere 8th grade celestial physician, Chu Yu, could not possibly have such ability. Chu Liyue was focused on refining the pill, turning a deaf ear to everything around her. Once, when she was still in Shangguanyu, she was quite good at refining pills and had a lot of experience. But after her rebirth, she never did it again. Today, it was because she wanted to win against Lu Ziyan that she had this idea. Based on her current strength, refining a grade 8 medicinal pill was not a problem. But 9th grade pills were a bit difficult. Instead of taking the risk, it was better to use a more reliable method, refining the pill. This method had a slightly lower requirement for the celestial physician's strength. Only the technique and attention requirements were higher, which was just right for her now. Of course, if the people present knew that she was thinking like this, they would probably have the heart to beat her. Because, it was precisely these that were the biggest test for a celestial physician. For martial artists and cultivators, if their talent was not enough, they could still make up for it with diligence. But celestial physician could not. Every step of a celestial physician's cultivation, every breakthrough, was closely related to the level of the cultivator's talent. For example, the same prescription, different celestial physician would have different effects. Only those with good talent and spirituality could bring out the greatest effect of this prescription. And the celestial physician's technique, sensitivity, perception, and so on were all included in the word talent. Some people, even if they practiced hundreds of times, might not be as good as others practicing once. And Chu Liyue was such a person. Why is there a group of people gathered over there? On the Dongwang Bell Tower, a few elders were sitting together. Hearing the movement, one of them looked down. It seems that there are students in a challenge. Wait, Wanzheng, come and take a look. That seems to be your new disciple. Elder Wanzheng heard the sound and walked over. Suddenly, his expression froze, and his brows slowly furrowed. This technique, why does it look a little familiar? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1165. He looked carefully at the young man who was refining pills. His movements were smooth and skillful. It was clearly an extremely tense challenge, but from his body, there didn't seem to be the slightest bit of nervousness. Elder Wanzheng narrowed his eyes, his expression turning serious. The familiar feeling in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Is it really Chu Yu? Wasn't he locked up in Min Mountain? Why is he? Ha! Wanzheng. I thought your disciple was obedient. I didn't expect him to be so stubborn. He just finished his punishment, and now he's fighting. The other elders also walked over and watched the competition with great interest. Hey, he seems to be refining pills. Suddenly, the elder who had first noticed the competition turned his head in surprise and glanced at Elder Wanzheng. Wanzheng, he didn't learn anything from you after he entered the school, right? Elder Wanzheng knew what he meant, so he replied, I didn't teach him how to refine pills. Oh, that's rare. The surrounding elders exchanged glances with each other when they heard this. Then, they began to laugh in an unknown manner. Most people wouldn't teach an 8th grade celestial physician how to refine pills, right? Yeah, I only started learning after I became a ninth-grade celestial physician a year ago. Hey, but this kid's refining skills are smooth and skillful. I think he's even better than the ninth-grade celestial physician. Wanzhang, you've got a good seed. The elders teased. Elder Wanzhang didn't say anything. He knew Chu Yu was talented, but he didn't expect him to be so good. If he remembered correctly, he was only 16 years old this year. If he were to succeed in this round of pill fusion, for some reason, a figure suddenly appeared in Elder Wanzhang's mind. He had the same amazing talent, and he kept getting into trouble. He clenched his fists in his sleeves. At this time, Lu Ziyan had finished refining pills and was waiting with the crowd. In the cauldron, the second pill was formed. As time slowly passed, the two pills finally condensed to the same size. Bang! Chu Luiyue slammed his palm down. An orb of flame wrapped around the second medicinal pill and flew up. The two pills floated in the air, facing each other. Seeing this scene, everyone unconsciously held their breaths. Here it comes. Chu Luiyue's eyes were fixed on the screen, and his mind was highly concentrated. This was the first time after her rebirth that she had directly tried to fuse her core. She had to win this round. Estimating that the temperature of the two flames had been adjusted, she took a deep breath. Two vigorous forces surged out from his dantian. Then, he poured it into his two hands. Boom! Boom! Two blazing flames instantly enveloped her hands. At the same time, she quickly raised her hands and controlled each of them. Then, she forcefully fused them together. As the two pills approached each other, they began to crazily repel each other. The flames around his body also started to become restless. Chu Luiyue did not hesitate in the slightest. He continued to increase his strength. The two medicinal pills approached at an extremely slow speed. And when their flames touched one another, whoosh! Sparks flew everywhere. The light was dazzling. Chu Luiyue's arms began to tremble slightly. She clenched her teeth and crazily urged the force in her body. Boom! On her hands, the flames burned even more fiercely. Under such strong movements, the flames of the two medicinal pills finally began to fuse. Lu Ziyan's heart seemed to have been ruthlessly knocked by something. A strong sense of uneasiness quickly filled his heart. Suddenly, between the two flames, there was a sound. Then, the flames that had begun to fuse actually separated from the middle again. At the same time, the two medicinal pills also began to slowly withdraw. Lu Ziyan's eyes brightened. I'm going to fail. If a celestial physician could not adjust the state of the two medicinal pills and forcefully fuse them, it would only lead to the complete destruction of the medicinal pills. Now, this was the situation. He could not help but laugh, his eyes full of ridicule. Blindly showing off could only lead to such a result. He already knew that Chu Yu, a mere 8th-grade celestial physician, could not do it. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, the two medicinal pills in the hands of the youth opposite him had already completely separated. Moreover, the flames on them gradually dimmed. Lu Ziyan clenched the jade box in his hands. His heart was already surging with ecstasy. This round, he would definitely win. What a pity. On the Dongguang Bell Tower, several elders were also watching the competition below. Seeing this scene, they could not help but reveal a look of regret. Just a little bit more, in the end, he is an 8th-grade celestial physician. His own strength is greatly lacking. It is indeed difficult to rely on technique to win. Another elder gave a fair evaluation and then looked at Wanzhang who was next to him. Seeing that he was only staring at the competition below without a change in expression and not saying a word, the elders thought that he was unhappy because his disciple was about to lose. Well, no one would be able to laugh about this matter. Moreover, this was a challenge. Losing was not the most important thing. If the opponent did not let Chuyu off, then it would be troublesome. According to the rules, even if they were elders, it was not good for them to interfere. Wanzheng, this time Chuyu lost, don't be disappointed. Actually, Chuyu's talent and potential are very outstanding. In time, he will definitely surpass the person opposite him. One of the elders consoled. With your guidance, this child will definitely have a place on the green cloud roll in the future. Elder Wanjing shook his head. He won't lose. Although his voice was calm, his tone was very determined. This was not a question, but a statement. Moreover, it was an extremely confident statement. The elders looked at each other. What was Wanjing saying? Chuyu won't lose. However, they could clearly see that the kid had already lost control of the two pills. Once the flames on them were completely extinguished, he would. How could this be? Suddenly, an elder's exclamation was heard. When the others heard that, they immediately looked over. When they saw the situation below, they all fell into a dead silence. On the spacious square, the youth who had already shown signs of weakness did not lose in a logical manner. On the contrary, the flames on the two pills in front of him actually burned wildly. The momentum was even more turbulent than before. He pressed his hands down with force. The two balls of flames instantly merged. At the same time, the two pills wrapped in them instantly merged with each other. Chu Luiyue shouted, "Condense." A shockingly rich medicinal fragrance burst out from within. The flames on her hands had completely enveloped the pill. In the next moment, the pill rushed out of the flames, trying to escape. Chu Luiyue tiptoed and actually flew up, taking the pill back. She quickly put it into the jade box that she had prepared earlier. Click. The jade box was sealed. Chu Luiyue landed lightly, her clothes fluttering. She raised the jade box in her hand, and smiled at the pale-faced Lu Ziyan in front of her. Senior Lu, want to compete? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1166. Dead silence. Everyone looked at the smiling young man. They were all shocked and speechless for a moment. Success, he actually succeeded in fusing the pill. This is impossible. Lu Ziyan suddenly shouted. He stared at Chu Luiyue. His eyes were burning with anger. It was as if he wanted to burn a hole in Chu Luiyue's body. There is definitely a problem with your pill. Chu Luiyue was not angry. Even the smile on his face did not waver. Since senior brother Lu is so sure, why don't you verify it yourself? Seeing Chu Luiyue's confident look, Lu Ziyan's heart became more and more uneasy. His heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something. He saw clearly just now that Chuyu was clearly about to fail. But who would have thought that he would actually turn the tide? Lu Ziyan kept comforting himself in his heart. Impossible, even a 9th-grade celestial physician would be helpless in that situation, let alone Chuyu. Even if his pill did not seem to have any problems, but, with such a large fluctuation, he did not believe that it was a completely intact pill. This Chuyu, he was most likely pretending to be calm. Thinking of this, Lu Ziyan's mood calmed down. He calmed himself down and walked forward. It seems that junior brother Chuyu is very confident in himself. Lu Ziyan coldly said. Since that is the case, why don't you take it out first? Chu Luiyue smiled. Senior brother Lu, let's finish refining first. You go first. Lu Ziyan gritted his teeth. He was more and more sure that this kid in front of him was guilty. He coldly snorted and picked up his jade box. Everyone's gazes were focused on it. Then, Lu Ziyan opened the jade box. A vermilion pill the size of a longan fruit was lying quietly within. Everyone could clearly see the lines on it. It was indeed a 9th grade lower pill. Did you see it clearly? Lu Ziyan's tone was somewhat impatient. Just as he was about to close the jade box, Chu Luiyue suddenly spoke. Wait. Lu Ziyan frowned. Is there anything else? Chu Luiyue pointed at his jade box. Senior brother Lu, there seems to be something wrong with your pill. Lu Ziyan's face slightly changed. What nonsense are you talking about? That medicinal pill just now was a 9th grade lower grade medicinal pill, everyone saw it clearly. What problem could there be? His voice was tinged with impatience and irritation. Chu Luiyue's expression did not change, and his smile was gentle. Senior brother Lu, although I'm only an 8th grade celestial physician, I can't compare to a 9th grade doctor like you. But I've seen grade 9 pills before. The quality of your pill just now seemed to be a little off. I wonder if Senior Marshal Brother Lu would mind picking up the pill and letting everyone take a closer look. Lu Ziyan's heart jumped. This kid, how could he tell? What right do you have to question my pills? Lu Ziyan gripped the jade box tightly and asked gloomily. Chu Luiyue blinked. This is a challenge. Isn't it normal to take out the pill for everyone to see clearly? Senior Marshal Brother Lu is so resistant, could it be that you don't dare? Lu Ziyan choked. In front of everyone, it was indeed difficult for him to refuse. He was so angry that he laughed. Good. Since that's the case, don't forget later, you have to do the same. Chu Luiyue smiled and nodded, pushing the boat with the current, of course. Senior Marshal Brother Lu, please. This time, Lu Ziyan was in a difficult position. He gritted his teeth, opened the jade box again, and took out the pill inside. Hey! There seems to be a spot on that pill. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the crowd. Lu Ziyan looked at that person fiercely with a fierce gaze. The person who spoke hurriedly kept quiet. But everyone had already heard this sentence. Moreover, everyone's eyesight was quite good. Even if that person did not say it, they could see that there was indeed a dark spot on the pill. In fact, that spot was only the size of a mung bean. Moreover, it was very inconspicuous on this vermilion red pill. But this meant that the quality of this medicinal pill had already been greatly reduced. Hiss, so Lu Ziyan's pill was not refined at all. With such a large spot, can this pill still be considered a 9th grade pill? The medicinal strength is mixed and unevenly distributed. Such a pill, even if it's a 9th grade pill, the effect won't be good, right? The crowd discussed animatedly. Some celestial physician gave an extremely sharp evaluation. Lu Ziyan's face was red and white, as if he was being tortured. He had been worried about this problem before, but he did not expect it to be like this in the end. He wanted to muddle through, but who knew that Chuyu was so treacherous and cunning? He braced himself and received everyone's various gazes, looking at Chu Luiyue with resentment and anger. You! Now, it's time for you to take out the pill and let everyone judge. Chu Luiyue slightly raised his eyebrows, opened the jade box without hesitation, and took out the pill. That pill was the same size as an ordinary pill, but the color was very strange. Dark green and light blue, 2 colors, each occupying half, the boundary was clear and the color was rich. Moreover, the surface of the pill was smooth and flat, suffused with a faint luster. With one look, one could tell that the medicinal strength was fused extremely well. But this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the lines on the surface were exactly the same as Lu Ziyan's previous large success pill. The pill that Chu Luiyue refined was clearly a 9th grade lower pill. When he saw the perfect color and shape of the pill, Lu Ziyan's heart was very uneasy. This uneasiness, when he saw the same level of lines, surged to the extreme. Almost in an instant, he already knew that this round, he had lost. The last trace of blood on his face faded away with a swish. The surrounding crowd, after a short moment of silence, suddenly exploded. 9th grade lower pill. Chu Yu's pill is actually a 9th grade lower pill. Moreover, this appearance is clearly stronger than Lu Xian's. Doesn't this mean that he won this round? I really couldn't tell that Chu Yu was actually so strong. Haha. To be able to enter Elder Wan Zheng's eyes, of course, he is not an ordinary person. Lu Xian originally wanted to rely on his status as a 9th grade celestial physician to crush the other party, who would have thought that he would fail. This time, I'm afraid that his face has been completely thrown away. All kinds of voices came one after another. Lu Xian's heart was beating wildly, his face was burning with pain. How could he have thought that Chu Yu would actually succeed? Just now, he was still thinking that Chu Yu's pill must have a problem, but now that he saw it with his own eyes, he could clearly see that Chu Yu's pill was indeed more outstanding than his. He couldn't even refute a single word. Chu Luiyue looked at him. Senior Lu, have you seen it? Lu Xian ground his teeth and said hatefully, you win. After saying that, he fiercely swung his sleeves and was about to leave. Wait. Chu Luiyue's voice came from behind. Lu Xian turned his head, his brows tightly knitted, his eyes filled with disgust. What else do you want? Chu Luiyue laughed, his eyebrows curved, and slowly said, did I say that this round is over? Mobile users, please browse and read, a better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1167. Lu Xian was startled. The crowd quietened down and looked at Chu Luiyue in confusion. What did he mean? He didn't want it to end. But the competition was already over, and he even won. What was the point of continuing? You still want to continue? Lu Xian's brows furrowed even tighter. I've already admitted defeat, what else do you want? Chu Luiyue smiled innocently. The so-called challenge competition requires both sides to agree to end the competition, isn't it? Looking at the youth's smile, Lu Xian's heart suddenly sank. He faintly felt that he had been tricked. You still want to compete in alchemy? Not to mention that he had already won, there was no need to continue. Even if they really had another match, the two of them didn't have much energy left. Who said we want to compete in alchemy? Chu Luiyue said in surprise. Isn't the challenge competition free to play? Ha! Don't tell me you still want to fight. Lu Xian seemed to have heard a joke and ridiculed. He sized up Chu Luiyue with undisguised contempt in his eyes. If I remember correctly, you're only at the early stage of rank 7, right? With this bit of strength, you still want to fight with me? It was normal for him to look down on Chu Luiyue's level. After all, the Academy's entry standard for martial artists was rank 9 martial artists. Even if some Xian master and celestial physician weren't good at this, most of them weren't weak. Chu Luiyue was at the early stage of rank 7 and was undoubtedly at the bottom of the list in the academy. Although Lu Xian didn't have much talent as a martial artist, he was still an expert at the early stage of rank 8. To deal with Chu Luiyue, who was at the early stage of rank 7, was a piece of cake. Moreover, a martial artists' competition was fought with real swords and spears. Without real ability, it was impossible to win by relying on unorthodox means. Obviously, from Lu Xian's point of view, Chu Luiyue took the initiative to make such a request because he wanted to use some underhanded means to win. Otherwise, he really couldn't imagine how Chu Luiyue could bridge the huge gap between the two of them. It's a challenge match anyway. What's one more round? Hearing Chu Luiyue's affirmative answer, Lu Xian almost laughed out loud. Are you sure? Chu Luiyue nodded seriously. Senior Marshal Brother Lu, please, Lu Zian let out a ha. Good. Then I'll fight with you. What is Chu Yu thinking? Not only did he win one match, he even wants to continue. Moreover, it's a martial arts competition. Early stage 7th stage, it's not that I look down on him, but his strength is too low. This time, if things don't go well, Lu Zian might be able to get back all the humiliation he suffered before, Luo Yanlin suddenly asked. How is his battle prowess? Luo Shishir didn't expect her fourth brother to take the initiative and shook her head. We've never seen him fight, so we're not too sure. Luo Yanlin pondered for a moment. Do you know where he came from? Luo Shishir and the others shook their heads together. Chu Yu didn't seem to like to talk about this. He had always been secretive, so they didn't ask much. But he has a very powerful yuan tool on him. After we entered the academy, the yuan tools we used to hide our aura were useless, but Chu Yu didn't seem to be affected. Even Elder Wenxi and the others didn't recognize it. Luo Yanming suddenly said. Oh. Luo Yanlin was surprised. There aren't many people who can have yuan tools of this level. There were two possibilities. Firstly, Chu Yu had unintentionally obtained that yuan instrument through a fortuitous encounter. Second, he came from an extremely powerful family. And his position was extremely high. Their Luo family was also a first-rate family. If they didn't have yuan tools of this level, then they definitely did. It was just that this item was extremely precious, and they might not be able to get it. Even he didn't have such a treasure when he first came to the academy, let alone Luo Shishir and the others. Luo Yanlin thought to himself and looked at the arena again. That young man stood tall and straight. Although his face was still a little immature, the expression between his brows was calm and collected. His temperament didn't seem like a nameless person. Lu Yintong and the others might have kicked a metal plate this time. Wanjing, Wanjing. On the Dongwang Bell Tower, a few elders were still watching the competition. One of them saw that Elder Wanjing was in a daze and didn't know what he was thinking, so he called out to him. Elder Wanjing snapped back to reality. What's wrong? What do you mean what's wrong? We want to ask you what's wrong. One of the elders laughed. What are you thinking about? You're so engrossed. Elder Wanjing frowned and shook his head. Nothing. Don't think about it. Let's look at your disciple first. Not only did he win the alchemy competition, but he also wants to continue fighting with others. The elders were shocked when they saw that Chu Luiyue had successfully fused the pills and won the competition. After the shock, they were filled with envy and jealousy towards Wanjing. Chu Yu's talent as a celestial physician was greater than they had expected. If they had known, they would have fought for it on the first day of the month. Elder Wanjing followed their gazes and looked down. As expected, the two of them had put away their cauldrons and were facing each other from a distance, preparing to compete. One of the elders suddenly laughed. Wanjing, not only is your disciple talented as a celestial physician, but he's also good at causing trouble. I guess you'll be busy in the future. It was a joke, but in Elder Wanjing's ears, it was as if a layer of fog had been lifted. Something seemed to have flashed through his mind. However, before he could think clearly, Lu Zian's furious voice came from below. Absolutely not. With his thoughts in a mess, Elder Wanjing frowned and looked down. On the square, the two of them faced each other. Lu Zian's face was flushed red and he was agitated. He pointed at Chu Luiyue. To be more precise, he was pointing at the small one on her shoulder. Although it was red and furry and looked very cute, everyone present knew that it was Chu Luiyue's contracted divine beast, red-tailed red phoenix. Moreover, this one had clearly defeated Lu Yintong's contracted divine beast before. It was obvious how strong its combat power was. If he were to really go against it. As a rank 8 warrior, Lu Ziyan would only have a dead end. This competition is between the two of us. If you use your contracted magical beast, it's cheating. Because of his nervousness, Lu Ziyan's voice was particularly sharp. Since the magical beast is contracted with the cultivator, they are partners. Living and dying together and fighting together is a matter of course. Why are you saying that I can't summon it now? Chu Liyue tapped Dumpling's head and chuckled casually. Why don't you call your contracted magical beast out for a battle? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1168. Lu Ziyan choked in her chest and almost spat at the person in front of her. Bah! He really had the nerve to say such things. He even wanted him to summon a contract magical beast. If he also contracted a divine beast, of course he wouldn't have any qualms. But how could there be so many divine beasts in the world? Even Lu Yintong's was something that he had painstakingly asked for. And her divine beast had previously lost to Chu Yu. If it weren't for that bet, there wouldn't be such a mess today. In front of such a tyrannical divine beast, his contracted 9th grade magical beast might not even be able to withstand 3 moves. Anyway, I don't agree. This competition can only be fought by the two of us. The smile on Chu Liyue's face faded a little. Her expression was restrained like this, and there was a faintly discernible cold pressure that spread out. Immediately, a cold and indifferent voice entered his ears. I said, let's compete like this. Lu Ziyan met that pair of cold and calm eyes, and his heart inexplicably felt a chill. Under the gaze of that pair of eyes, he inexplicably felt that he had become incomparably small, and unconsciously felt reverence in his heart. He shuddered. How could a teenager have such a gaze? He still wanted to refute, but for some reason, those words were stuck in his throat, and he couldn't say anything. He gritted his teeth. Fine. Let's compete. As long as he let the contracted magical beast stall the red-tailed phoenix, he could quickly finish off Chu Yu, and still win. Wind Owl Bird. He roared loudly, and the force around his body surged. Above his head, a huge bird beast quickly appeared. That bird beast's body was brightly colored, and its main color was dark blue. There were 9 white feathers on its head, and a pair of orange eyes, cold and indifferent. A 9th grade magical beast. In fact, a 9th grade magical beast's level was not low, but in a place like Lingxiao College, where the top powerhouses and geniuses gathered, it was very ordinary. Especially when the opponent was a real divine beast. The red-tailed phoenix with an extremely strong bloodline. Dumpling lazily opened its eyes. Perhaps it was because it had absorbed the power of Tianlei, but Chu Liyue felt that its aura was different from before. Dumpling's beautiful eyes swept over them. A trace of fear appeared in the eyes of the wind-glutton bird. That was the absolute pressure that came from his bloodline. Lu Ziyan naturally felt the subtle change in his contracted magical beast's mood, and couldn't help but be even more annoyed. Go! He let out a stern shout. As long as he could stop that red-tailed red phoenix for a moment, he would definitely be able to take care of Chu Yu. Although the windstalk bird was afraid, it could not disobey its master's orders. It flapped its wings and flew forward. Almost at the same time, Lu Ziyan's figure also disappeared from the spot. I didn't expect to see 2 celestial physician fighting like this in a challenge, an early stage 7th order and an early stage 8th order, ha. I haven't seen a competition of this level in a long time. Interesting, interesting. I really don't know what that Chu Yu is thinking. Since he won, he should just end it beautifully. Why did he have to deliberately make things difficult for himself? Don't say, if I had such a red-tailed red phoenix, I would dare to do the same. So what if he has a divine beast? If his own strength is not enough, it will also limit the divine beast's performance. In the end, it's not certain who will win or lose. If Lu Ziyan's speed is fast enough, there is still a high chance that he can win this round. Many of the surrounding martial artists were obviously interested, and each of them had different opinions. Chu Luiyue, who was on the field, more or less heard these words. Lu Ziyan's confidence increased greatly, but when he looked ahead, the youth's expression was still indifferent, as if he did not take those words to heart. Pretend. Lu Ziyan cursed in his heart. Let's see if he will still have such a calm and aloof expression when he is beaten to the point that he is looking for his teeth on the ground. At this moment, Dumpling had already flown up and faced the wind-glutton bird head-on. Thus, in Lu Ziyan's line of sight, there was only Chu Luiyue left. He almost laughed out loud. Without the divine beast's protection, Chu had even less of an advantage. He was simply full of flaws. Wind Thunder Fist. He mobilized the force in his body and poured it all into his right fist. Immediately, he fiercely punched forward. The wind from the fist whistled. The void shook. For this punch, Lu Ziyan used all his strength. He had to end this battle quickly. Chu Luiyue stood in her original position, her footsteps slightly moved back half a step, and her knees were slightly bent. She bent her arm, pulled back, accumulated strength, and slowly clenched her fist. It was clearly an extremely ordinary action, but when she did it, it was incomparably smooth and pleasing to the eye. It was as if all the blood, flesh, tendons, and bones in her body were perfectly mobilized. In front of her, Lu Ziyan's fist was already in front of her. The biting cold and terrifying pressure raised her hair, and her clothes fluttered. This astonishing power almost made people wonder if this punch would directly explode the opponent's head if it hit the face. Chu Luiyue's face was suffused with a layer of coldness. She stared straight at Lu Ziyan, who was opposite her, without any fear in her eyes. Immediately, without any hesitation, she punched out. The simplest. The most direct punch. Bang! Two fists collided. Kacha! The sound of bones breaking could be heard. The next moment, the complacent look on Lu Ziyan's face quickly disappeared, and replacing it was extreme pain. At this moment, Elder Wanjing, who was standing on top of the Eastern Emperor Bell Tower, narrowed his eyes. Unconsciously, he took a step forward and tightly held onto the railing with one hand. This fist technique, he had seen it before. Digression, it's almost the end of the month. There is still a quota for this month's Star of Long Reviews mobile users. Please browse and read, a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1169. The two of them were in a stalemate. However, one of them looked indifferent while the other's facial features were distorted. Lu Ziyan took a deep breath as he stared at Chu Luiyue in disbelief and horror. How could a rank 7 warrior have such terrifying physical strength? With this punch, he thought he would be able to finish off his opponent, but he did not expect that he would break his hand first. An intense pain came from his hand, almost causing his vision to turn black. He subconsciously wanted to retract his fist. But the young man in front of him suddenly raised the corner of his lips. That smile was extremely faint and cold. Lu Ziyan shuddered as all the hair on his body stood up. He did not even think and immediately retreated. However, it was too late. Chu Luiyue took the lead to change his fist into a palm and clamped down on his wrist, and immediately bent it upwards. Crack! Another bone-crunching sound rang out. Lu Ziyan finally could not hold it in and let out a shrill scream as cold sweat kept coming out from his forehead. Seeing his hand being forced into a strange position, the onlookers were all shocked. In fact, they had seen much more bloody scenes than this. But what made them feel cold was that when the young man on the field was doing this, his expression was so calm. Even the corner of his mouth had a faint smile. It was as if breaking a person's hand was no different from breaking a piece of wood to him. To be able to have such a reaction, it was either his natural disposition was cold and callous, or he was used to such scenes, so he did not take it to heart. But no matter which one it was, it contained the same logic. This person was not to be trifled with. Lu Ziyan was about to use his force to resist, but Chu Luiyue had already lifted his leg and kicked him in the chest. Pooh! Lu Ziyan flew out and landed heavily on the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned ashen. He used his other arm to struggle to get up, but after a few attempts, he did not succeed. At the same time, his breathing became heavier and heavier, like an old bellows. He could only gasp for air. It was as if there were countless needles piercing his chest. The pain was unbearable. Lu Ziyan's heart was filled with hatred. This was the result of Chu Yu's kick. If he hadn't experienced it personally, he wouldn't have believed that a rank 7 warrior could be so strong in close combat. Just as he tried to stand up again but failed and fell to the ground, a pair of black deerskin boots appeared in his line of sight, as well as a fluttering corner of clothes. His movements suddenly stopped. Only his heart was beating wildly, as if it was about to jump out of his chest. He raised his head slowly and with great difficulty, he saw that familiar face. Looking at that youthful face and that pair of eyes that seemed to be like a black pool that could never be seen through, Lu Ziyan's heart suddenly surged with an unprecedented fear. At this moment, he suddenly realized that this young man was not someone he could provoke. Chu Luiyue looked down at him and clicked his tongue. Rank 8 warrior. Aren't you a little too impatient? She thought that Lu Ziyan could at least resist for a while, but who knew that with one punch, he couldn't stand it. Compared to the puppets of the same rank that she fought with when Dabao trained her, it was like heaven and earth. What Chu Luiyue didn't know was that those puppets were meticulously refined by Dabao. Other than the fact that they didn't have any force, they were the best in all aspects. She was used to fighting with those puppets, so it was naturally easy for her to fight against such a puppet. Hearing her words, everyone's heart skipped a beat and looked at her strangely. Impatient, he is at least 1 rank higher than you. You're going too far by saying that. No one could understand the fear in Lu Ziyan's heart. Just now, the other party only used 2 moves, and almost didn't use any force, and he was directly crippled. This Chu Yu's physical strength could be said to be terrifying. Previously, he only thought that he was talented as a celestial physician and was mediocre as a warrior, so he shouldn't be a concern. Who knew that he was such a pervert? Lu Ziyan felt that half of his life was about to be kicked away by that kick. Bang! Suddenly, a muffled sound came from the side. Something fell to the ground, and even the ground shook. Lu Ziyan turned his head to look, and his breathing stagnated. It was his contracted magical beast, the wind squawk bird, which was directly beaten to the ground by the red-tailed phoenix's wings. Looking carefully, the feathers on the wind squawk bird's body were also charred black and messy. It looked very miserable. Chu Luiyue turned his head, and the corner of his lips curled up slightly. Dumpling, I'm faster than you this time. Dumpling stepped on the wind squawk bird's face fiercely. Then, it flew to Chu Luiyue's shoulder and squatted down. Hearing Chu Luiyue's words, its bright eyes flashed with a trace of dissatisfaction. It was because it had swallowed the Tianlei's power, the bloodline power, and its body was preparing to awaken. It took some time to adjust the power in its body, which was why it was late. Otherwise, it would definitely be faster. Chu Luiyue nodded its head, and looked at Lu Ziyan meeting that pair of smiling eyes. He suddenly had an idea and shouted with difficulty, I admit defeat. I really admit defeat. I don't want to fight anymore. If he continued to fight, what would he do with the remaining half of his life left here? His words, which were filled with fear and pleading, caused everyone to completely quiet down. This scene was really strange. The two of them, one standing and one lying down, one high and one low. It should have been a competition without any suspense, but at this moment, the one begging for mercy was the higher-level Lu Ziyin. Even half a quarter of an hour ago, no one would have believed that things would develop in such a direction. In the dead silence, only Lu Ziyan's begging voice was exceptionally clear. Chu Luiyue tilted his head. You admit defeat. Yes. I lost. I'm not as good as you, and I accept my loss wholeheartedly. You don't want to fight anymore. I don't want to fight anymore. Facing Chu Luiyue's questions, Lu Ziyin answered every question very quickly, without the slightest hesitation. Seeing that Chu Luiyue seemed to be lost in thought, a glimmer of hope rose in his heart, and he added, I promise, in the future, in the academy, I will never fight with you again. Chu Luiyue touched his chin. Ugh. It seems that you really don't want to fight anymore. Lu Ziyin swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty. At this moment, he could no longer care about Lu Yintong's reminder to teach Chu Yu a lesson. His heart was filled with thoughts of getting out of the current situation as soon as possible. Yes. I really won't disturb you anymore. I promise. Lu Ziyin hurriedly took out his black jade token as a guarantee. You don't want to fight anymore. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows slightly, and suddenly smiled. A glimmer of light flashed in his eyes, and he was as sly as a fox. He whispered, how can there be such a good thing? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1170. Lu Ziyan's expression instantly froze. He looked at Chu Luiyue in disbelief, thinking that he might have heard wrongly. However, the cold smile in her eyes was a silent reminder, you didn't hear wrongly. You still want to continue. Lu Ziyan heard his own voice stuttering. Not sure if it was because of his injuries or other reasons, his voice was very weak. Coupled with his pale face, he looked like a ghost. Chu Luiyue laughed, as if he was in a good mood. Yes. Isn't this the challenge's rule? Only when both of them agree, the competition will end. If either side wants to continue, the competition cannot be stopped. As long as no lives are lost, everything else is free. Lu Ziyan's eyelids twitched. This Chu Yu, he was serious. Endless regret surged up and swallowed Lu Ziyan. He should not have arranged this challenge with Chu Yu. He should have just followed his initial plan and casually come here to exchange pointers and teach him a lesson. Why did he have to take the initiative to propose a challenge? Furthermore, it was wrong of him to promise Lu Yintong to deal with Chu Yu. But it was futile to say all these now. Chu Yu. I have already admitted defeat, what else do you want? Fear, worry, and anxiety filled Lu Ziyan's heart, causing him to explode. Anyway, Chu Yu did not intend to let him go, so there was no point in continuing to beg for mercy. These 2 times, I admit that I have lost to you. You have already won, but you are still unwilling to let me go. What do I have to do to make you give up? Chu Luiyue's face showed a trace of surprise. You are the one who proposed a challenge with me. Why are you blaming me now that you have lost? Saying this, she looked at Zhong Sun and asked sincerely. Senior Zhong Sun, in the academy, if you win a challenge, do you have to apologize to the loser? Pfft, in the quiet crowd, someone suddenly could not hold back and let out a laugh. This sound was like a switch being pressed. More and more people laughed, and finally it became a mess. Ha 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 ha. That's right. The winner had to apologize to the loser. Junior apprentice brother Chu Yu, you beat senior apprentice brother to this extent, you have to properly compensate. Ha ha ha. Hurry up and help your senior martial brother Lu up. Isn't apologizing in person not enough? I'm afraid you have to prepare a generous gift, right? If you ask me, I'd say that our academy is indeed extraordinary. Even after losing, we can still act like a big shot. I'll challenge those few on the Azure Sky rankings someday and teach them a lesson. Everyone burst into laughter. All kinds of mocking words were mixed together, and every word was incomparably clear. Zhong Sun also laughed and raised his voice. Junior brother Chu Yu, don't worry. You won fair and square. We all saw it. The rules of this competition have been in place for many years and have never been changed. You just have to do what you want to do. In the academy, the strong were still respected. Lu Ziyan's face that was as pale as a ghost quickly turned red. He wished he could find a hole to hide in. He had been in the academy for more than a year and had never been so humiliated. His face had been completely lost this time. Chu Luiyue took a step forward. Her step was very light, but it seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 caddies. It heavily pressed on Lu Ziyan's heart. He panted heavily. Every part of his body was in unbearable pain. His lips trembled slightly, but he could no longer speak. Chu Luiyue raised her hand. Wait. A delicate rebuke was suddenly heard. Chu Luiyue raised his eyes and looked in the direction of the voice. The crowd consciously parted in the middle. A person slowly walked forward. It was Lu Yintong. Her beautiful face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. Her entire body was suffused with a shocking coldness. The originally lively crowd quickly quieted down because of her arrival. Many people secretly exchanged glances. There had been rumors in the academy that Chu had offended Lu Yintong on Thousand Wine Mountain. Today, it seemed that the rumors were true. There was indeed a conflict between the two of them. Lu Yintong seemed to not care about the surrounding gazes. She walked straight to the front of the square, looked at Chu Luiyue, and coldly ordered. Let him go. Her tone was so matter-of-fact and arrogant. It was as if others were born to listen to her orders. Zhong Sun frowned and spoke first. Lu Yintong, this is a challenge. According to the rules, outsiders are not allowed to interfere. Lu Yintong glanced at him. Her face was full of undisguised contempt. Since when is it your turn to teach me a lesson? Zhong Sun's expression was a little ugly. The other party's ranking on the Azure Cloud Roll was not low. Moreover, she occupied the Warrior and Celestial Physician rankings at the same time. She was indeed more powerful and had more status than him. I'm not teaching anyone a lesson. I'm just stating the facts. Zhong Sun clenched the fists in his sleeves. He did not show any signs of backing down. Regardless of whether it's you or the others present, you can only watch. Whether this competition continues or not depends on the two of them. To be precise, it depends on Chu Luiyue. Boring. Lu Yintong sneered. She did not take him seriously at all. She retracted her gaze and looked at Chu Luiyue. This time, her voice was sharper, and it carried a clearer tone of command. Chu Yu, I told you to let him go. This competition will end here. Just as Zhong Sun opened his mouth, he was stopped by Chu Luiyue. Senior brother Zhong Sun, this is between senior sister Lu and me. You don't have to worry too much. Anyway, she had already offended Lu Yintong. This was not a big deal. On the other hand, there was no need for Zhong Sun to be implicated because of her. Zhong Sun wanted to say something but hesitated. After seeing Chu Luiyue's gaze, he could only suppress the impulse in his heart and nod gently. Chu Luiyue looked at Lu Yintong and smiled. Senior sister Lu, long time no see. How have you been? I wonder if that red-tailed red phoenix of yours has already been raised. It would have been fine if he did not mention this, but the moment he did, Lu Yintong's anger soared. You don't have to worry. Don't talk about this nonsense. I only want to ask you, didn't you hear what I said just now? Chu Luyue nodded. I heard it. Since you heard it, be tactful and do as I say. Lu Yintong had always had a fiery temper and an extremely strong self-esteem. She still hadn't recovered from the loss last time. Every time she thought about it, she would still be brooding. If not for the fact that Chu Luyue was standing on the Qingming Square, she would have already rushed forward. Oh, this, Chu Luyue's voice was very long. There was a hint of a smile on her lips, and she looked a little careless. She stepped on Lu Xian's remaining hand with one foot. Lu Xian originally wanted to dodge, but he didn't have the time. By the time he reacted, he had already felt an intense pain coming from his hand. Chu Luyue slowly crushed Lu Xian's hand, and the sound of bones breaking rang out one after another. She tilted her head and chuckled. It seems a little difficult. Because I hate it the most when others order me to do things. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Coupled with the fact that he was used to acting ostentatiously, it was inevitable that he would be arrogant and willful. How could Lu Yintong let this go? It was actually very understandable for him to do such a thing. However, she did not expect that the final outcome would be like this. Not only did Lu Xian fail to teach Chu Luyue a lesson, but she also made her lose face. The way some people looked at Lu Yintong gradually changed. He took the initiative to compete with others, but he was not convinced after losing. He even deliberately used such methods to bully others behind their backs. Wasn't he too narrow-minded? She only dared to bully Chu Yu because he was a new student and did not have any background. If it was someone stronger than her or someone with a strong background, she would definitely have a different reaction. Lu Yintong felt as if there was a blade at her back. The surrounding people's gazes made her feel extremely pressured. She could not stay any longer and finally could not help but sneer. So, now you admit that you're deliberately taking revenge. Chu Luyue smiled faintly. Senior Sister Lu, you're exaggerating when you say that I'm taking revenge. I'm just an ordinary student. I came to Lingxiao College just to improve my cultivation. I don't have any other intentions. It's just that if people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I can't be a pushover. Don't you think so? Lu Yintong clenched her teeth. This time, seeing that Senior Sister Lu is here personally, I'll let it go. Chu Luyue glanced at Lu Zi, and who was lying on the ground. Senior Brother Lu, when you go back, you must recuperate well. When I'm free, I'll visit you again. Lu Zi shuddered. He did not need Chu Ning to visit him. He did not want to see this person again in the future. He stood up with difficulty and limped away. Originally, his body had suffered heavy injuries, so he couldn't stand up. However, probably because he wanted to get away from Chu Luyue too much, he gritted his teeth and held on. When he walked to Lu Yintong, he lowered his head in shame. Lu Yintong gave him an extremely cold warning look and reprimanded him in a very low voice. Useless thing. Lu Xian's body stiffened and his head lowered even more. Needless to say, his life at Lu Yintong's place would not be easy in the future. Lu Yintong suddenly took a step forward. He's no match for you. Then, what about me? Everyone quieted down. Lu Yintong was going to fight with Chu Yu. Many people, including Zhong Sun, were worried. Even if Chu Yu could defeat Lu Zihan, he was definitely not Lu Yintong's opponent now. If the two of them really fought, Chu Yu was afraid. Just as Chu Luyue was thinking about how to answer, a familiar voice suddenly came from the side. Lu Tong, isn't it a little shameful for you to fight with a junior who just came to the academy? Chu Luiyue looked towards the source of the voice and was a little surprised. The one who spoke was actually Luo Yanlin. Strange, wasn't he hostile towards me before? Why did he take the initiative to help me now? When Lu Tong saw that the person who spoke was Luo Yanlin, a trace of surprise flashed across her face and a little fear appeared in her eyes. The other party's strength was far higher than hers. She did not want to offend him easily. Since Luo Yanlin spoke, it meant that he was on Chu Yu's side today. Lu Tong weighed in her heart for a moment and decided to give up. Senior brother Luo is right. She forced a smile on her face. I also saw Z and in this state and was anxious for a moment. Forget it. Since senior brother Luo is here, then today's matter, let's forget about it. Lu Tong took a deep look at Chu Luiyue one last time. Chu Yu. I look forward to seeing you enter the Azure Sky role as soon as possible. At that time, we will officially compete. After saying that, she turned and left. Lu Ziyan followed behind with difficulty and slow movements. A few people beside him came forward to help him. However, before she could take 2 steps, Chu Luiyue's voice came from behind her. Senior sister Lu, wait. Lu Tong turned back and frowned. Chu Luiyue suddenly laughed. Senior sister Lu, did you forget something? Lu Tong's frown deepened. Chu Luiyue patiently reminded her. There seems to be one more thing that hasn't been fulfilled from our bet that day. Senior sister Lu, don't you remember? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1172. Even if Lu Tong didn't look for her, she would still go to her. She had finally won the bet, so she couldn't give up. Lu Tong's face turned pale. Of course I didn't. Going to Thousand Wine Mountain for a month and asking for the best spot, to her, this was not something that could be easily accomplished. She thought that Chu Yu would be more restrained after being locked up in Min Mountain. She didn't expect him to be even more reckless. Then I'll have to trouble senior sister Lu to send me to the top of Thousand Wine Mountain every day for the next month. Chu Luiyue's next sentence made Lu Tong even angrier. What did you say? You want me to send you there personally? Senior sister Lu, why are you so surprised? Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows slightly. I only said that because I heard that the spot isn't fixed and we have to go there every day. If senior sister Lu doesn't go with me, how can I get the spot next to the spring? Don't you think so? Lu Tong's chest heaved up and down violently. Senior sister Lu, the bet is set. Are you not willing? Chu Luiyue seemed to have noticed something and asked carefully. Lu Tong was so angry that she laughed. Okay. Since you said so, I'll accompany you to the end. Don't you want to go to Thousand Wine Mountain? I'll go with you every day for the next month. She wanted to see what kind of tricks this Chu Yu could still play. Lu Tong turned around and left angrily. Her footsteps were much faster than before. The crowd quickly made way for her. After Lu Tong's figure disappeared, many people turned around and looked at Chu Luiyue with admiration. TSK. Could it be that this Chu Yu really went all out? From now on, he had completely fallen out with Lu Tong, right? He was really courageous. Chu Luiyue didn't seem to notice those people's gazes. He tidied his clothes and walked down from the square. Zhong Sun quickly walked up to him. Junior brother Chu Yu, seeing his slightly worried face, Chu Luiyue smiled and comforted him. Senior brother Zhong Sun, don't worry. I know what to do. Looking at the young man's firm and indifferent eyes, Zhong Sun suddenly felt that he seemed to be much more mature and calm than he had imagined. Even she couldn't guess what he was thinking. He could only nod. Anyway, she was the one who started it, so you can't be blamed for it. Moreover, if she really wants to do something, Elder Wanjing probably won't agree to it. As the only disciple that Elder Wanjing had accepted in the past few years, even an idiot would know that Elder Wanjing would definitely dote on him and would not allow him to be bullied. At this moment, another voice came from the side. Your boxing is not bad. Chu Luiyue and Zhong Sun turned around to look, and saw that Luo Yanlin and the others had unknowingly arrived. It was Luo Yanlin who spoke. He looked at Chu Luiyue from head to toe, and his eyes flashed. Early stage 7th order. Your strength doesn't seem like it. Chu Luiyue smiled and chose a euphemistic way of saying it. I'm more durable. That was true. After fighting with those puppets, her resistance might not even be comparable to a 8th order warrior, let alone someone of the same level. Of course, it was the same when fighting others. Every punch hit the flesh. It was all thanks to Dabao that she was able to win this match so easily today. Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue suddenly frowned. Dabao said that he would wait for her in the academy, but there was no movement until now. She didn't know if he was in the academy now, or why he hadn't come to find her. Chu Yu, what's wrong with you? Seeing that Chu Luiyue was a little absent-minded, Luo Shishir couldn't help but ask. Chu Luiyue came back to her senses and shook her head. Nothing, just a sudden fight, and I'm a little tired. Everyone, you've been winning from the beginning to the end, and you didn't suffer any injuries, so why are you tired? Luo Yanlin suddenly said. You seem to be quite talented in martial arts. If you have time, ask the elders and cultivate well, maybe it's not bad. If this Chu Yu was really only at the early stage of the 7th order, then the fact that he could defeat Lu Ziyan so easily was enough to prove his talent. Even if his current realm wasn't high, but in the future. Maybe it was limitless. Chu Liuyue's lips curled up slightly. Thank you for your advice, Senior Brother Luo. In addition, today's matter can be considered as owing Senior Brother Luo a favor. If there is a chance in the future, Chu will definitely repay it. Luo Yanlin admired Chu Luiyue even more in his heart. The reason why he spoke was not entirely to help Chu Yu. But the other party took the initiative to accept his favor, which was indeed smart and righteous. It's just a matter of a sentence, I don't need you to repay anything. After all, you are Shishir's friend, so this small matter is not worth mentioning. In the future, cultivate well and get on the Azure Cloud list as soon as possible, then you won't be bullied like this. Chu Liuyue's expression was slightly restrained as she nodded seriously. Alright, since this matter is over, you all should go back and have a good rest, Chu Yu. Before Luo Yanlin could finish, a voice suddenly came from behind. The few of them turned their heads and saw the door of the Donghuang Bell Tower suddenly open, and Elder Wanjing was walking out. He walked over and stopped in front of the few of them for a moment. The few of them bowed in unison. Greetings, Elder Wanjing. Chu Luiyue quickly glanced at his expression. Master. Follow me. Elder Wanjing's face was expressionless, and no one could tell what he was thinking. He only said this sentence and walked forward. The few of them looked at each other. Why do I feel like something is wrong with Elder Wanjing? Luo Shishir muttered. It's not just a feeling, it's true. Zhuoxing's tone was firm, but his face was full of confusion. Strange. Chu Yu, logically speaking, your master, Elder Wanjing, should be very proud and happy that you won this challenge so beautifully. Why? He couldn't explain it, but it was strange. It didn't seem like he was happy or angry, and it was hard to fathom. Chu Luiyue shook his head. I'll go first, I'll find you later. With that, he followed. Zhong Sun wanted to follow, but he stopped when he remembered Elder Wanjing's expression. Chu Liyue followed Elder Wenjing back to his residence. This was Chu Liyue's first time coming to ancient Cypress Mountain. She was supposed to formally acknowledge him as her master on the second day after the examination, but something happened at Thousand Wine Mountain that night, and she was directly locked up in Pingmin Mountain, so she couldn't come. The mountain was lush with green trees, and the faint fragrance of herbs filled the air. In the academy, every elder's residence was independent, so there were only the two of them on the mountain. Halfway up the mountain, in a herb field, there was a simple wooden house. The two of them walked into the house, and Elder Wenjing finally stood still and turned around. He looked at Chu Liyue quietly, and there was a sharp and cold light in his calmness. It was as if he wanted to see through her completely. Chu Liyue's heart slowly tightened. Elder Wenjing stared at her and asked word by word, "Who taught you your boxing skills?" Love Network asked. "Who taught you your boxing skills?" You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.